Hello guys, welcome to Fiction Quest. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto awakened Azure Dragon power and fell in love with Rangiku Matsumoto? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. Azure awakening. The storm had chased Naruto for 3 days. Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the jagged coastline of the land of water as he leapt from one slippery rock to another. Rain pelted his face, plastering blonde hair against his forehead protector. This wasn't ordinary weather. He'd felt it from the moment the clouds gathered, carrying a strange chakra signature unlike anything he'd encountered before. Should have brought a better coat, he muttered, adjusting the black and orange jacket that had long since soaked through. 6 months after the end of the Fourth Shinobi War, and here he was, chasing atmospheric anomalies instead of enjoying the peace he'd helped create. The world was rebuilding, alliances were strengthening, and Naruto Uzumaki, war hero, Jinchuriki, and perpetually restless ninja, couldn't ignore the mysterious energy readings Konoha's sensors had detected. A massive wave crashed against the cliffs below, sending spray high enough to drench him again. Naruto paused, crouching to maintain balance as he extended his senses. The Nine Tails chakra within him stirred, responding to something in the distance. You feel it too, don't you, Kurama? The Nine Tails rumbled inside his mindscape. This isn't natural, it's old, older than me, perhaps. Naruto squinted through the downpour. About half a mile ahead, a thin spire of rock rose from the churning sea, connected to the mainland by a narrow stone bridge. Atop it sat what appeared to be ruins of some kind, barely visible through sheets of rain. Lightning struck the structure, but instead of the expected flash and fade, blue energy lingered, coursing through ancient stone. That's gotta be it, he said, chakra already gathering at his feet as he prepared to sprint across the treacherous bridge. The stone path was slick with algae and seawater, forcing him to channel continuous chakra to maintain traction. Halfway across, the bridge narrowed to barely the width of his shoulders. The wind threatened to throw him into the violent sea below. Be careful, Kurama warned. The energy feels territorial. When am I not careful? Naruto grinned, then immediately slipped, Ching himself with a kunai jammed between stone blocks. The fox's sigh echoed in his mind. When Naruto finally reached the island spire, the ruins revealed themselves as a small temple complex. Once grand pillars lay toppled, and the remains of a tiled roof had mostly washed away over centuries. At the center stood a surprisingly intact structure resembling a small shrine, its entrance flanked by weather-worn dragon statues. Naruto approached cautiously, running fingers across stone scales. Though eroded by countless storms, the craftsmanship was impressive. The dragons seemed almost alive. Serpentine bodies coiled protectively around the shrine's entrance. These aren't from any style I recognize, he murmured, studying their elongated forms. Not the stocky dragons from Fire Country art, nor the feathered versions from Wind Country scrolls. The storm intensified as he stepped between them. Wind screamed through broken pillars, and the rain fell so heavily it seemed to be coming from all directions at once. Naruto created a shadow clone to help push open the heavy stone door blocking the entrance. Inside, the air was surprisingly dry and still. As his eyes adjusted to the darkness, Naruto formed a small Rasengan, using its blue glow to illuminate the chamber. The walls were covered in elaborate carvings, scenes of a great serpentine dragon soaring above oceans, commanding storms, and interacting with humans who appeared to be channeling its power. Kurama, any idea what this place is? It's a shrine to Seiryu, the Azure Dragon of the East, the Nine Tails replied. One of the 4 celestial beast gods from before my time. Even the Sage of 6 Paths spoke of them with reverence. Naruto whistled low. That's some serious history. At the chamber's center stood a stone altar. Unlike the weathered exterior, this structure appeared pristine, as if time itself flowed differently around it. Atop the altar sat a crystalline orb, roughly the size of Naruto's fist, glowing with a faint blue light. That's definitely what we came for, he said, approaching slowly. Wait. Kurama began. But Naruto's outstretched fingers had already brushed against the crystal's surface. A jolt of energy, not chakra, but something similar yet fundamentally different, surged up his arm. The orb's glow intensified, pulsing in rhythm with Naruto's heartbeat. What the? He tried to pull away, but his hand remained fixed to the crystal as if magnetized. Images flashed through his mind. Vast oceans, raging storms, a colossal azure dragon soaring through clouds, its scales shimmering with power. The creature turned its ancient gaze directly toward him, intelligent eyes assessing, judging. The connection broke suddenly as a kunai whizzed past his ear, embedding itself in the altar inches from his hand. Naruto spun, instantly alert, the crystal momentarily forgotten. 3 figures stood in the temple doorway, silhouetted against flashes of lightning. They wore strange scaled plates overlapping like reptile skin, in shades of deep green and black. Their faces were partially concealed behind masks resembling serpent heads. Step away from the Seryu orb, Konoha Nin, commanded the tallest of the 3. A woman whose voice carried the hard edge of authority. That artifact belongs to the Orochi clan by ancestral right. Naruto shifted into a defensive stance, keeping the altar at his back. Funny, I don't recall seeing your name on it. Who exactly are you people? The woman stepped forward, revealing a face marked with scale-like tattoos extending from beneath her mask. I am Orochi Keita, first fang of the Serpent's Maw. My clan has protected the secrets of the celestial beasts for generations. Her eyes narrowed, including from meddling Jinchuriki. Quote, how do you? Your reputation precedes you, Naruto Uzumaki. She drew a curved blade from behind her back, its metal gleaming with an oily sheen that suggested poison. Now step aside, or die where you stand. Naruto measured the 3 opponents with a practiced eye. The woman, Keita, was clearly the leader, her chakra signature sharp and focused. The 2 men flanking her were formidable as well, one built like a mountain. The other wiry and tense like a coiled spring. Listen, Naruto said, keeping his tone reasonable, I'm just investigating energy anomalies. I don't want your crystal, liar, hissed the wiry man. The hidden leaf has always coveted power. First the tailed beasts, now the celestials. Stand down and you may live to see tomorrow, Keita added, taking another step forward. Naruto's patience thinned. Look, I don't know what grudge you have against Konoha, but if you want to talk this out, the large man formed hand signs with surprising speed. Earth style. Stone python binding. The temple floor cracked as stone serpents erupted around Naruto's feet, coiling upward to restrain him. He leapt backward, narrowly avoiding their grasp, only to collide with the altar. The crystalline orb wobbled precariously. Don't let the orb fall, Keita shouted. Instinctively, Naruto reached to steady it, and in that split second of distraction, the wiry attacker appeared beside him in a blur of movement. Water style. Venomous mist technique. Poisonous vapor erupted from the man's mouth, engulfing Naruto before he could react. He held his breath, but felt the toxin burning against his exposed skin. Kurama's chakra immediately began neutralizing the poison, but not quickly enough to prevent the momentary disorientation. Through watering eyes, Naruto saw Keita charging, her blade aimed at his chest. He twisted aside, the poisoned edge slicing through his jacket and grazing his arm. Shadow Clone Jutsu. 4 copies of Naruto burst into existence, creating space between him and his attackers. 2 clones engaged the wiry assassin, while another pair confronted the Earth-style user. Naruto himself faced Keita, kunai in hand. You're making a mistake, he said, blocking her second strike. I don't want to fight you. The Azure Dragon's power isn't meant for human hands, she snarled, her blade moving in complex patterns that forced Naruto to give ground. Especially, why not those already containing a tailed beast? Behind them, Naruto's clones battled fiercely. One disappeared in a puff of smoke as the large man caught it with a stone-encased fist. Another managed to land a solid kick on the wiry assassin before being dispelled by a water whip. Naruto and Keita locked weapons, faces inches apart. What happens if I just walk away? He asked. Take your orb and leave. Something shifted in her eyes. Surprise, perhaps even consideration, before hardening again. Too late for that. You've touched it. The resonance has begun. Before Naruto could question her meaning, a searing pain shot through the arm that had contacted the crystal. Blue energy crawled beneath his skin like lightning through water, tracing patterns along his veins. He gasped, momentarily dropping his guard. Keita seized the opportunity, driving her knee into his stomach and following with an elbow strike to his jaw that sent him sprawling. Naruto rolled to avoid her downward slash, coming up beside the altar once more. The crystal's glow had intensified, pulsing rapidly now. The pain in Naruto's arm spread across his chest, reaching toward his heart. Something's wrong, Kurama growled. This energy, it's trying to integrate with our chakra network. Fight it. Trying, Naruto grunted, dodging another attack while struggling against the spreading energy. His remaining clone dispelled as the other two Orochi members joined their leader. Naruto found himself surrounded, back against the altar, as strange blue patterns continued spreading across his skin. It's happening already, the wiry man observed, voice tinged with alarm. Keita-sama, we must kill him now before the resonance completes. I know, she raised her blade. Forgive me, Uzumaki, you should have heeded our warning. The three attacked simultaneously, Keita from the front, the others from either side. Naruto, fighting both his attackers and the invasive energy, realized he couldn't evade all three. Time seemed to slow. In that frozen moment, he felt Kurama's chakra surge, not against him, but alongside the blue energy crawling through his system. Rather than resisting, the Nine Tails was adapting, creating pathways for the new power. Don't fight it, Kurama advised. Guide it. Naruto exhaled, ceased his resistance, and instead directed the energy as he would his own chakra. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Blue light erupted from his body, throwing his attackers backward. The crystal on the altar resonated, its glow intensifying until it was painfully bright. Naruto felt a strange duality, as if he were simultaneously inside the temple and soaring high above it, viewing the scene through inhuman eyes. Wind howled through the chamber, carrying the scent of ocean depths and storm clouds. The blue patterns on Naruto's skin stabilized into scale-like markings running from his fingertips up his arms and across his chest. His eyes, when he opened them, glowed azure. The Azure Dragon accepts him. The larger man exclaimed, genuine fear in his voice. Keita staggered to her feet, expression torn between rage and awe. Impossible. The Celestials don't bond with tailed beast hosts. Naruto looked down at his transformed arms, feeling strange new energy coursing alongside his familiar chakra. The sensation was exhilarating and terrifying simultaneously, power unlike anything he'd experienced. Even after harmonizing with Kurama, before he could test this new ability, the temple began to shake. Stone dust rained from the ceiling as the entire structure vibrated in sympathy with the crystal's pulsations. Outside, the storm reached fever pitch, lightning striking the temple repeatedly. The dimensional barriers are weakening. Keita shouted over the cacophony. The resonance is too strong. The air in the center of the chamber began to distort, light bending around a point that seemed to fold inward upon itself. A tear appeared, not in fabric or paper, but in reality itself, widening into a swirling vortex of energy. Through this impossible opening, a figure stumbled forward, as if pushed from the other side. Long strawberry blonde hair whipped around a beautiful face wearing an expression of complete shock. The woman was dressed in a black kimono and hakama, with a pink scarf draped over her shoulders and a badge tied to her arm. Most striking was the enormous sword she instinctively drew as she found herself surrounded by strangers. Her eyes, gray and alert, scanned the chamber before settling on Naruto. What the hell? She demanded, sword raised defensively. Where am I? And what have you done with the hollow I was pursuing? The dimensional rift collapsed behind her with a thunderclap, leaving the chamber in sudden, ringing silence. The momentary confusion gave the Orochi clan members their opening. The Earth-style user slammed his palms against the floor. Earth-style. Crushing serpent pit. The ground beneath them all began to collapse. Stone transforming into quicksand-like material. Naruto leapt upward, instinctively channeling the new Azure energy to his feet. To his shock, he didn't just jump. He practically flew, hovering momentarily near the ceiling. The newcomer woman reacted with equal speed, somehow standing on air itself several feet above the crumbling floor. Who are you people? She demanded, eyes darting between Naruto and the Orochi clan members. And why does that one? She pointed her blade at Naruto, have spiritual pressure that's going haywire. Keita and her companions were struggling against their own earth technique, the quicksand pulling them downward. With a gesture of frustration, Keita made a hand sign. This isn't over, Uzumaki. The orb belongs to us, and we will reclaim it. The three vanished in swirls of water, escaping the collapsing temple, which left Naruto floating near the ceiling, staring at an equally airborne woman who had literally appeared from another dimension. Hi there, he offered weakly. I'm Naruto, and you might want to move. This whole place is coming down. As if to emphasize his point, a massive section of the ceiling broke free, crashing into the quicksand below. The mysterious woman rolled her eyes. Obviously, she resheathed her sword in one fluid motion. I'm Rangiku Matsumoto, lieutenant of the 10th Division. And you're going to tell me exactly what's happening here, after we get somewhere less crumbly. The crystal on the altar pulsed one final time before the quicksand swallowed it. A flash of blue light shot from the sinking orb directly into Naruto's chest, knocking him backward through the temple wall and into the raging storm outside. He tumbled across wet stone, coming to a stop dangerously close to the cliff edge. The new energy inside him fluctuated wildly, responding to his disorientation. Rain pelted his face as he struggled to his knees, watching the temple collapse in on itself. Kurama, he gasped, what's happening to me? The power of Seiryu is integrating with our chakra, the Nine Tails replied, sounding both concerned and intrigued. It's unstable, but not hostile. Like it's examining us. A blur of black appeared beside him, the woman. Rangiku, somehow moving faster than his eyes could track. You're leaking spiritual energy everywhere, she said, crouching to examine him more closely. Her eyes widened, at the blue markings still visible on his skin. What are you? You're not a normal human, but you're definitely not a soul reaper or hollow either. Could say the same about you, Naruto managed. Wincing as another wave of Azure energy surged through him. Appearing out of thin air like that, the island shuddered beneath them. Cracks spread across the stone, threatening to send the entire spire crumbling into the sea. Explanations later, Rangiku decided, pulling him to his feet with surprising strength. We need to move now. They sprinted toward the narrow bridge connecting to the mainland, but before they'd gone halfway, a massive section collapsed, leaving a 20-foot gap over churning waves. Great, Rangiku muttered. Naruto took a deep breath, focusing on the strange new energy alongside his chakra. If he could fly before. Follow me. He sprinted toward the gap and leapt, channeling the Azure power to his feet and legs. He soared across the chasm, the sensation differ. NT from chakra-enhanced jumping, more like being carried by currents of air. He landed on the other side, turning back to see Rangiku watching with a raised eyebrow. She simply stepped forward and walked across empty space as if it were solid ground. Show off, Naruto called over the storm. Says the guy glowing blue, she countered, reaching his side. Behind them, the temple spire finally surrendered to structural damage and gravity, collapsing into the violent sea with a thunderous crash. The storm, however, didn't abate. If anything, it intensified, lightning striking with increasing frequency. We need shelter, Rangiku shouted over the wind. This spiritual pressure is attracting the storm. There's a fishing village about 5 miles south, Naruto replied, pointing along the coastline. Can you keep up? She gave him a look that was equal parts amusement and challenge. Try me, Whiskers. Despite the chaos of the last few minutes, Naruto found himself grinning. There was something about this woman's confidence that was instantly likable. Race you there. Without waiting for a response, he took off, channeling chakra to his feet in practiced motions. To his surprise, Rangiku kept pace effortlessly, practically gliding over the rocky terrain. So who were those snake people? She asked as they ran, seemingly unbothered by the exertion or the driving rain. Orochi clan. Never heard of them before today. Naruto replied. They were after that crystal, called it the Seiryu orb. Seiryu, the Azure dragon. Rangiku's expression turned serious. That's a name we know in Soul Society too. One of the 4 great guardian beasts. Soul Society, Naruto repeated. Is that where you're from? Another dimension. A particularly violent gust nearly knocked them both off their feet. Rangiku grabbed his arm to steady him, then froze, staring at where her hand touched the blue markings on his skin. Her eyes widened. "You've been spiritually marked," she said. "Whatever was in that orb has bound itself to you." Naruto felt the energy respond to her touch, surging toward the contact point. Rangiku must have felt it too, because she quickly withdrew her hand. "What exactly are you?" she asked again, more insistent this time. "I'm a ninja from Konohagakure," he replied. "And I'm also the Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed fox." At her blank expression, he added, "That means I ha. A tailed beast sealed inside me, a being of immense chakra." Chakra? You mean spiritual energy? Not exactly. It's a combination of physical and spiritual energy that we use to perform jutsu, our techniques. Lightning struck a tree nearby, splitting it in half and sending burning splinters in all directions. They both ducked, abandoning the conversation in favor of speed. The fishing village paired through the rain as a cluster of lights along the shoreline. By the time they reached the outskirts, both were drenched to the bone, though Rangiku somehow managed to look elegantly disheveled rather than simply waterlogged. The village was small, perhaps 20 modest buildings arranged around a central harbor where fishing boats strained against their moorings in the storm. Most windows were shuttered against the weather, but light spilled from what appeared to be an inn near the docks. They hurried inside, bringing a gust of wind and rain with them. The common room was warm and dimly lit, with a handful of patrons, mostly fishermen waiting out the storm, seated at wooden tables. All eyes turned toward the newcomers. Naruto suddenly became aware of how they must appear, him with glowing blue markings visible beneath his torn jacket, and Rangiku in her strange black uniform, both dripping seawater onto the wooden floor. An elderly woman approached from behind the counter, eyeing them suspiciously. "We don't want trouble here." "None intended," Naruto assured her, forcing a friendly smile. "Just seeking shelter from the storm. We can pay." He reached for the wallet in his back pocket, relieved to find it still there. The innkeeper's expression softened slightly at the sight of money. "2 rooms then." "Actually," Rangiku interrupted, "we'll need to discuss some matters first." "1 room with 2 beds will be fine." Naruto raised an eyebrow but didn't contradict her. The innkeeper led them upstairs to a small but clean room with 2 narrow beds, a table between them, and a window overlooking the harbor. "There's a bathhouse down the hall if you want to warm up," she said. "I'll send up some tea." Once they were alone, Rangiku immediately turned to Naruto, her friendly demeanor replaced by professional intensity. "Now, explain everything from the beginning. What were you doing at that temple, and why did those Orochi people attack you?" Naruto sank onto one of the beds, suddenly aware of how exhausted he felt. The blue markings on his skin had faded somewhat, but still traced visible patterns along his arms. "I was sent to investigate unusual energy readings in this region," he began. Konoha's sensor unit detected something they couldn't identify, not chakra, but similar. He described finding the temple, touching the orb, and the subsequent attack by the Orochi clan. As he spoke, Rangiku's expression grew increasingly troubled. "And this, Kurama, you called it. The creature sealed inside you, it's communicating with you about this power." Naruto nodded. "Kurama says it's the power of Seryu, the Azure dragon. Apparently, it's one of 4 ancient beings that predate even the tailed beasts." Rangiku paced the small room, her expression thoughtful. "In Soul Society, we know the 4 guardian beasts as powerful spiritual entities that maintain balance between dimensions. Seryu of the East governs water, wind, and spiritual connections." She paused. "But they're supposed to be abstract forces, not powers that can be contained in orbs or transferred to humans." "Well, something definitely transferred to me," Naruto said, examining the markings on his skin. "And I'd appreciate knowing exactly what I'm dealing with." Rangiku stopped pacing, fixing him with a penetrating look. "I need to explain some things about the world, or worlds, rather." He described Soul Society, a spiritual realm where souls go after death, governed by the Soul Reapers who maintain balance between worlds. She explained how she was a lieutenant in the Gote 13, the military organization of Soul Reapers. And how she had been pursuing a hollow, a corrupted soul, when she was suddenly pulled through the dimensional rift. Normally, humans can't even see Soul Reapers unless they have significant spiritual power, she concluded. But you not only see me, you interact with spiritual energy in a way I've never encountered before. This chakra you mentioned seems compatible with our Ryutsu, spiritual pressure. And these blue markings, the Azure Dragon power. Rangiku shook her head. I've never seen anything like it. But if the legends are true, and Seiryu is a guardian of dimensional boundaries, it might explain why my pursuing that hollow led me here when the orb activated. The barriers between worlds may be weakening. A knock at the door interrupted them. A young girl delivered a tray with a teapot and cups before hurrying away, clearly intimidated by the strange guests. As Rangiku poured the tea, Naruto closed his eyes, focusing inward. Kurama, what do you make of all this Soul Society stuff? It's consistent with what I know, the fox replied. The sage spoke of realms beyond our own, and guardians that maintained the boundaries. If this woman is from such a place, it would explain her unusual energy signature. And the Azure Dragon power. It's stabilizing, Kurama observed. Rather than fighting our chakra, it's harmonizing with it. I suspect it chose you deliberately, Naruto. Perhaps because of your unique chakra as a Jinchuriki, or perhaps for something else entirely. Naruto opened his eyes to find Rangiku watching him intently. Were you just communicating with the creature inside you? She asked. Kurama, Naruto corrected gently. And yes, he's not just a creature, he's my partner. Something in Rangiku's expression softened. I see. In Soul Society, we have Zanpakuto, spirit swords with their own consciousness that bond with soul reapers. She touched the hilt of her sword. Hineka is mine. It's not quite the same as your situation. But I understand spiritual partnerships. They sipped tea in silence for a moment, the storm still raging outside. The blue markings on Naruto's skin pulsed gently, less frantically than before. So, he finally said, what happens now? You're stuck in my world, and I've somehow absorbed the power of an ancient dragon deity. Rangiku set her cup down, her expression serious. Those Orochi people will come back for the power inside you. And if the dimensional boundaries are weakening, we may face threats from both our worlds. She hesitated. I need to report to Soul Society somehow. But until I find a way back, I should stay close to you. Why's that? Because whatever's happening centers around that Azure Dragon power you've absorbed. And because, she gestured at his marked skin, you're leaking spiritual energy that will attract hollows. Without proper training, you're a beacon for spiritual predators. Naruto leaned back against the wall, processing this information. So I need protection from soul-eating monsters I can't even see properly, and you need my help figuring out what's happening with these dimensional barriers. Precisely. Great. He grinned suddenly. I was worried peacetime was getting boring anyway. Despite herself, Rangiku smiled. There was something infectious about his optimism. You're taking this remarkably well for someone who just had his world expanded. Not the first time, Naruto shrugged. Won't be the last. Outside, the storm finally began to abate, the howling wind decreasing to a moderate gale. The worst seemed to have passed. At least temporarily. We should return to your village tomorrow, Rangiku suggested. You mentioned Konoha. I need to gather more information, and if your people detected the energy anomalies before, they might have recorded other occurrences. Naruto nodded. It's about 3 days' journey from here. Assuming we don't run into more Orochi clan members or, what did you call them? Hollows. Hollows. Rangiku confirmed. And yes, we should assume we'll encounter resistance. The Orochi clearly want that power, and hollows will be drawn to your spiritual pressure like moths to flame. Then we'd better get some rest, Naruto said, suddenly yawning. The day's events, the discovery, the battle, the awakening of new power, had left him exhausted. Rangiku nodded, moving to the other bed. I'll take first watch. Soul Reapers don't need as much sleep as humans. Naruto wanted to protest that he wasn't an ordinary human either, but fatigue overcame him. As he drifted toward sleep, the blue markings on his skin dimmed to a soft glow, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. In his dreams, he soared above vast oceans, his body transformed into a serpentine dragon of immense proportions. The world below seemed small and fragile, the boundaries between realms visible as shimmering membranes stretching across reality. A voice, ancient and powerful, whispered in his mind, the barriers weaken. The balance falters. Guardian, awaken. Naruto stirred in his sleep, the blue markings brightening momentarily. Across the room, Rangiku watched with concerned eyes, her hand resting instinctively on her Zanpakuto. Something fundamental had changed in the fabric of reality, and they were now at the center of it. Morning arrived with surprising calm after the previous night's tempest. Golden sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Naruto awoke to find Rangiku seated by the window, her Zanpakuto across her lap, gaze fixed on the harbor below. "You actually stayed awake all night?" he asked, sitting up. "I told you, Soul Reapers don't need much sleep." She turned to face him, eyes widening slightly. "Your markings." Naruto looked down at his arms. The blue patterns had receded, now visible only as faint lines tracing his veins. "They're still there, just less obvious. The spiritual pressure has stabilized," Rangiku observed. "You're not leaking energy everywhere now, which is good." Naruto stretched, surprised to find no lingering pain or stiffness from yesterday's battle. If anything, he felt better than usual, energized, his senses sharper. "Kurama says the Azure Dragon power is harmonizing with our chakra. It feels right, somehow." Rangiku's expression remained skeptical. "Celestial powers bonding with mortals is rarely right, in my experience. There's always a price." "Well, no use worrying about it now," Naruto said, getting to his feet. "We should head to Konoha. I need to report what happened, and Granny Tsunade might have insights about these Orochi people." Granny Tsunade, former Hokage, our village leader. She's stepped down officially, but she's still our foremost expert on, well, weird stuff like this. They left the inn after a quick breakfast, Naruto drawing curious stares from the villagers. He realized belatedly that his jacket was still torn from yesterday's battle. Rangiku, by contrast, seemed to attract attention simply by existing, her beauty and confident bearing making her stand out despite her unusual attire. "Can everyone see you now?" Naruto asked as they walked. "Apparently," she replied, frowning. "That's unusual. Normally, only spiritually aware humans can perceive Soul Reapers. Something about crossing through that rift must have partially materialized me in this world." The journey to Konoha would take them first through the remaining stretch of the Land of Water, then across the sea to the eastern coast of the Land of Fire, and finally inland to the Hidden Leaf Village. Naruto led them along coastal paths, avoiding major settlements where possible. "So, these hollows," he said as they traveled, "what exactly are they?" "Corrupted souls," Rangiku explained. "When humans die, their souls should pass on to Soul Society. But those with regrets or attachments sometimes linger too long in the world of the living. Eventually, the chain of fate that anchors them erodes completely, leaving a hole in their chest, hence the name, Hollow. They lose their hearts, becoming creatures of pure instinct that devour other souls to fill the emptiness. And your job is to fight them. To cleanse them," she corrected. "When we defeat a Hollow with our Zanpakuto, we don't destroy the soul, we purify it, allowing it to pass on to Soul Society. It's about maintaining balance between worlds." Naruto mulled this over. "In our world, when people die, their souls. I'm not sure what happens, actually. I've met reanimated people before, but that was through a forbidden jutsu." Rangiku looked troubled. "Reanimation? You mean necromancy?" "Sort of. It's called Edo Tensai, a technique that binds souls to sacrificial bodies. We faced an army of reanimated ninja during the war. That's a major violation of the natural order," Rangiku said, clearly disturbed. "In Soul Society, such techniques would be forbidden in the highest category." "It is here too," Naruto assured her. "Only the most depraved shinobi have ever attempted it." They fell silent as they approached a more exposed section of coastline. Naruto's enhanced senses picked up movement ahead, a pat. Rawl of water country ninja monitoring the border. He signaled to Rangiku, and they diverted inland, taking a less direct route through forested hills. "Your world has its own military forces," Rangiku observed as they navigated the dense vegetation. 5 major hidden villages, each serving one of the great nations, Naruto confirmed. "We were at war not long ago, but we're in an unprecedented period of peace now. The Shinobi alliance formed during the war has continued, more or less." "And you, what's your role in this alliance?" Naruto hesitated, uncharacteristically modest. Helped end the war. Played a part in defeating the main threat. Rangiku raised an eyebrow. Just played a part, huh? It was a team effort, he insisted, then changed the subject. What about Soul Society? Is it peaceful? A shadow crossed her face. We've had our conflicts, most recently against a traitor named Aizen who sought to overthrow the Soul King and remake reality. He hurt a lot of people. The pain in her voice was unmistakable. Naruto recognized it immediately, the same tone he heard when friends spoke of loved ones lost in the war. He didn't press further. By midday, they reached the eastern shore of the Land of Water. The sea stretched before them, relatively calm after yesterday's storm. We need to cross, Naruto said. Normally I'd hire a boat, but we're trying to avoid attention, Rangiku finished. She studied the distance. How good are you at walking on water? Naruto grinned. One of the first skills they teach us. He stepped onto the water's surface, chakra. A distribution automatic after years of practice. Rangiku followed, using whatever Soul Reaper technique allowed her to walk on air with equal ease. They set out across the sea, moving at a brisk pace. Naruto found himself impressed by Rangiku's stamina. She maintained the same speed without apparent effort, her expression serene as she glided over the water. How far is it? She asked after about an hour. Usually takes most of a day by boat, Naruto replied. But at our pace, we should reach the mainland by evening. The sun beat down on them, its reflection on the water's surface almost blinding. Naruto removed what remained of his jacket, tying it around his waist. The blue markings on his arms were barely visible now, appearing only as a slight discoloration beneath his tanned skin. Say the Azure Dragon controls water and weather, Rangiku commented, watching him. Have you noticed any new abilities since absorbing its power? Naruto considered this. Hard to say. I feel connected to the water somehow. And the air. He extended his hand, focusing on the sensation of moisture around them. To his surprise, a small sphere of water rose from the sea's surface, hovering above his palm. That's not chakra manipulation, he said, startled. At least, not entirely. Rangiku watched with professional interest. Pure spiritual manipulation of elements. Similar to Kido, our spell craft, but more intrinsic. Less formalized. Naruto allowed the water to drop back into the sea. I'll need to practice, figure out what else I can do. Carefully, Rangiku cautioned. Uncontrol. Spiritual power can. She stopped abruptly, head snapping toward a point to their left. Her hand moved to her Zanpakuto. What is it? Naruto asked, instantly alert. Hollow, she said grimly. And a strong one. It's coming this way, fast. Naruto strained his senses. At first, he detected nothing, but then, a presence, malevolent and hungry, approaching beneath the waves. Not quite chakra, not quite the energy he'd sensed from Rangiku. But something in between. I can feel it, he realized. Is that the Azure Dragon power letting me sense these things? Likely, Rangiku confirmed, drawing her sword. Stay back. This is my area of expertise. The water 30 yards to their left began to churn, a whirlpool forming as something massive rose from below. Naruto braced himself, kunai in hand despite Rangiku's warning. What emerged was nightmare fuel, a creature 15 feet tall with a vaguely humanoid torso but the lower body of an octopus. Its face was concealed behind a bone-white mask, with elongated eye sockets and rows of sharp teeth. A hole the size of a dinner plate punctured its chest, revealing empty space where a heart should be. That's a hollow, Naruto exclaimed. An unusually powerful one, Rangiku confirmed. Her stance relaxed but ready. It must have been drawn by your spiritual pressure yesterday. The hollow's mask turned toward them, empty eye sockets somehow focusing on Naruto. Soul, it bellowed, voice distorted and echoing. Powerful soul. They can talk, Naruto asked, surprised. The intelligent ones can, Rangiku replied grimly. Those are the most dangerous. The hollow surged forward, tentacles propelling it across the water's surface with frightening speed. Rangiku intercepted it, her Zanpakuto flashing in the sunlight as she severed a tentacle reaching for Naruto. The creature howled in pain, black ichor spraying from the wound. It retaliated with surprising coordination, multiple tentacles attacking from different angles. Rangiku moved with fluid grace. Her blade an extension of herself as she parried and countered. Is it always like this? Naruto called, dodging a tentacle that had slipped past her defense. Pretty much, Rangiku replied, leaping over another attack. Though they don't usually show up in the middle of the ocean. The hollow changed tactics, diving beneath the surface where Rangiku's mobility was limited. Naruto tracked its movement by the disturbance in the water, calling out warnings as it circled them. It's trying to separate us, he observed. Classic predator tactic. Stay on the surface, Rangiku instructed. If it pulls you under. The hollow erupted directly beneath Naruto, tentacles wrapping around his legs before he could react. He was dragged underwater, the creature's masked face inches from his own as they sank into the depths. Underwater, the hollow's spiritual pressure felt even more oppressive, a miasma of hatred and hunger pressing against Naruto's senses. Its grip tightened painfully around his legs and torso, pulling him closer to its gaping maw. Kurama, a little help. Naruto thought desperately. The Nine Tails chakra might agitate it further, Kurama cautioned. Try Azure Dragon Power. Water is its domain. Naruto closed his eyes, focusing on the faint blue energy within him. Unlike chakra, which he usually visualized as a flow of power, this energy responded more to intent and emotion. He thought of currents, of tides, of the vast strength of the ocean itself. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Blue light erupted from his body, spreading outward through the water in concentric rings. The hollow's grip loosened as it was pushed back by an invisible force. Water around Naruto began to swirl, forming a protective vortex that separated him from his attacker. Above, Rangiku had plunged her Zanpakuto into the sea, preparing to dive after them. She paused, eyes widening at the blue glow emanating from beneath the waves. Underwater, Naruto found he could breathe, or rather, extract oxygen directly from the water around him. The sensation was strange but not unpleasant. The markings on his skin had returned in full force, glowing brightly as EY extended across his chest and up his neck. The hollow recovered from its initial surprise, charging forward with renewed fury. This time, Naruto was ready. He extended his hand, channeling the Azure Dragon's power with instinctual precision. Water style. Azure current binding. The technique wasn't one he'd ever learned or even heard of, the knowledge simply appeared in his mind as the power responded to his need. Currents of water, glowing with the same blue energy that marked his skin, shot toward the hollow, wrapping around its limbs like liquid chains. The creature thrashed violently, but the bindings held firm. Naruto pushed forward, closing the distance between them. He raised his hand, chakra spiraling in his palm, but not the usual Rasengan. This version was infused with Azure energy. The spiraling sphere surrounded by currents of water that rotated in the opposite direction of the chakra core. Azure Rasengan. He drove the technique into the hollow's mask. On impact, the sphere expanded explosively. The water component amplifying the force of the chakra core. Cracks spread across the bone-white surface before it shattered completely. The hollow dissolved, its body breaking apart into particles of light that drifted upward through the water. Unlike the violent death Naruto had expected, the creature's passing seemed almost peaceful, as if his technique had indeed purified rather than simply destroyed it. Naruto floated in the depths for a moment, marveling at what had just happened. The Azure Dragon power receded gradually, the bright markings fading once more to subtle lines beneath his skin. A splash above announced Rangiku's arrival. She swam toward him with powerful strokes, clearly expecting to find him in distress. Her eyes widened when she saw him calmly floating, apparently in no hurry to return to the surface. Naruto grinned and pointed upward. Together, they kicked toward the light. They broke the surface simultaneously, Naruto gasping more from exhilaration than oxygen deprivation. You purified it, Rangiku said, astonishment evident in her voice. Without a Zanpakuto, that shouldn't be possible. I didn't know what I was doing, Naruto admitted. The power just responded to the threat. They climbed back onto the water's surface, Naruto shaking his head like a dog to clear water from his hair. Rangiku, somehow, emerged looking as if she'd barely been dampened. The Azure Dragon is a purification deity in some legends, she said thoughtfully. Guardian of the East, associated with spiritual cleansing as well as water and air. She studied him with new interest. This power may be more significant than either of us realized. They resumed their journey, Naruto occasionally testing his new abilities, drawing small amounts of water into different shapes, manipulating air currents to ease their passage. Each experiment came more naturally than the last, as if he were remembering skills rather than learning them anew. By sunset, the coast of the Land of Fire appeared on the horizon, a line of forested cliffs bathed in orange light. They reached the shore as the first stars became visible, climbing a steep path to the top of the bluffs. "We'll make camp here," Naruto decided, gesturing to a small clearing surrounded by pine trees. "Continue to Konoha in the morning." As Naruto gathered firewood, Rangiku sat cross-legged, eyes closed in what appeared to be meditation. When he returned, she was frowning slightly, concentration evident on her face. "What are you doing?" he asked, arranging the wood. "Trying to contact Soul Society," she replied without opening her eyes. "There are methods for emergency communication, but something's blocking me. The dimensional barriers feel strange, unstable." Naruto lit the fire with a minor fire-style jutsu. "Is that bad? Potentially catastrophic," Rangiku said bluntly, opening her eyes. "The barriers between dimensions exist for a reason. If they're weakening, hollows in the human world," Naruto guessed. "Among other things, Soul Society maintains the balance of souls between worlds. If that system breaks down, the consequences would be far-reaching." They sat in silence for a while, watching the flames dance. The night was clear, stars spreading across the sky in brilliant profusion. A cool breeze carried the scent of pine and salt from the sea below. "In my dream last night," Naruto finally said, "I heard a voice. It said, 'The barriers weaken, the balance falters, Guardian awaken.' Think that was the Azure Dragon." Rangiku's expression turned serious. "Likely. The celestial beasts are said to exist partially outside normal dimensions, allowing them to observe multiple realms simultaneously. If Seiryu chose you as its vessel or representative, why be trying to communicate through your unconscious mind? But why me? I'm already Kurama's Jinchuriki. Isn't one spiritual entity enough? Perhaps because of me, Kurama offered within Naruto's mindscape. Our chakra is already merged. Your body is accustomed to containing vast energy. Few humans could survive absorbing a celestial beast's power." Naruto relayed this theory to Rangiku, who nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense. Your spiritual core is already expanded beyond normal human capacity. And if the Azure Dragon is concerned with maintaining dimensional barriers, having a vessel who can interact with both physical and spiritual realms would be advantageous." She stoked the fire absently. "There's something else. When you fought that hollow, your spiritual pressure briefly matched its frequency. That's how you purified it instead of just destroying it. That kind of spiritual harmonization is extremely rare, even among experienced soul reapers. So I got lucky." "I don't believe in luck when it comes to spiritual phenomena," Rangiku said seriously. "Everything happens for a reason, especially when celestial entities are involved." Naruto lay back, hands behind his head, gazing at the stars. "Well, whatever the reason, we'll figure it out in Konoha. If anyone can make sense of interdimensional barriers and ancient dragons, it's our research division." Rangiku seemed skeptical but didn't contradict him. "We should rest. I sense no hollows nearby, but we should remain vigilant." "I'll take first watch this time," Naruto insisted. "You've been awake for over 24 hours. To his surprise, she didn't argue, simply nodding and arranging herself more comfortably by the fire. Within minutes, her breathing had deepened, exhaustion finally catching up to her. Naruto watched her sleep, noting how her features softened, making her appear younger and more vulnerable. In battle, she moved with lethal precision, her confidence unmistakable. At rest, he could say, the weight she carried, the responsibility of her position, perhaps, are past wounds still healing. He turned his attention outward, extending his senses into the surrounding forest. The Azure Dragon power enhanced his perception, allowing him to feel the movement of air currents, the moisture in the soil, the subtle vibrations of nocturnal creatures moving through undergrowth. "You're adapting quickly," Kurama observed. "The Azure Dragon's power feels almost natural now." "It's strange," Naruto replied mentally. "It's not like when I first used your chakra. that was overwhelming, burning. This feels more like remembering something I always knew. The celestial beasts existed before humans, before tailed beasts, Kurama said. Perhaps their energy is more fundamental to the world itself, easier for living beings to integrate. Or maybe it's just choosing to cooperate, Naruto suggested. If it needs me for something, fighting would be counterproductive. Always the optimist, Kurama chuckled. But be cautious, Naruto. Power freely given often comes with unexpected costs. The night deepened around them, peaceful for now. But as Naruto gazed up at the stars, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was merely the calm before a storm, one that would make yesterday's tempest seem like gentle rain by comparison. Somewhere, the barriers between worlds were weakening. And somehow, he had become central to whatever would happen next. Sunrise found them already moving through the forests of the Land of Fire, heading northwest toward Konoha. Rangiku had awoken refreshed, her energy restored after even a few hours' rest. Naruto, despite his own brief sleep, felt similarly invigorated, whether from the Azure Dragon power or simple anticipation of returning home, he couldn't tell. So what's your village like? Rangiku asked as they traveled, leaping from branch to branch with practiced ease. Konoha, it's the greatest place in the world, Naruto replied without hesitation, his pride evident. Still rebuilding after Pain's attack and the war, but stronger than ever. You'll see the Hokage monument first, giant faces of our leaders carved into the mountainside. And will your face be there someday? Rangiku asked with surprising insight. Naruto nearly missed his next branch. How did you know? She smiled. The way you talk about your village. It's the same way our captains speak of the Gote 13, with devotion and ambition. Yeah, Naruto admitted. Being Hokage has been my dream since I was a kid. Getting closer every day. They traveled in comfortable silence for a while. The forest gradually thinning as they approached more populated regions. By mid-morning, they encountered the first patrol of Konoha ninja, Chuchunin monitoring the outer perimeter. Naruto-san, one called in surprise. We weren't expecting you back so soon. Change of plans, Naruto replied easily. This is Rangiku Matsumoto. She's a special consultant from far away. We need to report directly to Kakashi-sensei. The guards eyed Rangiku curiously but didn't question further. Naruto's status in the village afforded him certain privileges. They passed through with minimal formality, continuing toward the village proper. Kakashi-sensei, Rangiku asked once they were out of earshot. Hitaki Kakashi, the 6th Hokage. My former teacher. Naruto grinned. He's going to be so jealous I get to escort someone as beautiful as you around the village. Rangiku laughed, the sound bright and genuine. Are you flirting with me, Naruto Uzumaki? Just stating facts, he replied with surprising smoothness. Besides, we interdimensional travelers have to stick together, right? Before she could respond, they crested a hill, bringing Konoha into view in the valley below. The village spread outward from the Hokage monument, a mixture of traditional wooden structures and newer, more modern buildings reflecting the ongoing reconstruction efforts. The distinctive, red roof of the Hokage tower stood prominently near the center. Naruto paused, allowing Rangiku to take in the sight. Home, he said simply. They approached the main gates, where the eternal Sentin, Ls Izumo and Kotetsu immediately recognized Naruto. Back already, Kotetsu called. And who's your friend? Special envoy. Naruto replied with the same vague explanation. Need to see Kakashi-sensei immediately. The guards exchanged knowing looks but waved them through without further questions. As they entered the village proper, Naruto noticed people's reactions to Rangiku, curious glances, appreciative stares. And the occasional double take at her unusual attire. We should probably get you some less conspicuous clothes, he suggested as they navigated the bustling streets. Rangiku glanced down at her shihakusho. What's wrong with my uniform? Nothing. It's just distinctive. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck. And we might want to keep your origin quiet for now, at least until we brief the Hokage. She conceded the point with a nod. Lead the way, then. They made a brief detour to a clothing shop, where Rangiku selected a simple outfit in shades of gray and burgundy that complemented her coloring while attracting less attention. She kept her zanpakuto, but wrapped its distinctive hilt in cloth to make it resemble a conventional sword. Better. she asked, emerging from the changing room. Naruto found himself momentarily speechless. The civilian clothes somehow emphasized rather than diminished her striking appearance. Yeah, much better. They continued to the Hokage Tower, climbing the familiar spiral staircase to the administrative level. Outside the Hokage's office, they were met by Shizune, who looked surprised but pleased to see Naruto. "You're back early," she observed. "Kakashi-sama is in a meeting with the council elders, but he should be finished soon." "It's urgent," Naruto insisted. "Tell him it concerns the energy anomalies in the land of water, and interdimensional threats." Shizune's expression turned serious. "Wait here." She disappeared into the office, returning moments later. "He'll see you now." The Hokage's office was much as it had always been, spacious, with large windows overlooking the village, walls lined with scrolls and books. Hatake Kakashi sat behind the desk, his lower face concealed by his customary mask, his CNGLE visible eye regarding them with intelligent curiosity. "Naruto," he greeted, then shifted his gaze to Rangiku. "And you must be the interdimensional threat." "Just interdimensional," Rangiku clarified with a smile. "Rangiku Matsumoto, lieutenant of the 10th Division of the Gote 13, Soul Society." If Kakashi was surprised by this introduction, he didn't show it. "Please, sit. Tell me what happened." Naruto recounted their adventure, finding the temple, the Orochi attack, the awakening of the Azure Dragon power, and Rangiku's arrival through the dimensional rift. As he spoke, he demonstrated the faded blue markings on his skin, which brightened slightly when he channeled the energy. Kakashi listened without interruption, his expression unreadable behind his mask. When Naruto finished, the Hokage leaned back, fingers steepled before him. "So to summarize, you've absorbed the power of an ancient celestial entity. Dimensional barriers between our world and this Soul Society are weakening. And we potentially face threats from both the Orochi clan and these hollow creatures." He sighed. "I thought retirement might be boring. Clearly, I was mistaken." "There's more," Rangiku added. "The destabilization of dimensional barriers won't stop with just our two worlds. If the Azure Dragon's power has awakened due to this threat, the other celestial beasts may respond similarly." "Four in total, correct?" Kakashi asked. Naruto nodded. "Seiryu the Azure Dragon of the East, Byakko the White Tiger of the West, Suzaku the Vermilion Bird of the South, and Genbu the Black Turtle of the North. And the Orochi clan is seeking these powers," Kakashi mused. "What do we know about them?" "Very little," Naruto admitted. "They seem to have specialized techniques involving serpents, similar to the Ruchi Cave sages. But darker. I'll have our intelligence division gather what information we can," Kakashi decided. "In the meantime, Rangiku-san, you're welcome in Konoha as our guest. We should arrange a more detailed exchange of information about our respective worlds." "Thank you, Hokage-sama," Rangiku bowed slightly. "I've been trying to contact Soul Society without success. If your researchers have technology that might amplify spiritual communications, that would be immensely helpful." "I'll arrange access to our research division," Kakashi promised. He turned to Naruto. "And you should meet with Tsunade immediately. If anyone understands ancient chakra manifestations, it's her." Naruto nodded in agreement. "We were thinking the same thing." As they prepared to leave, Kakashi added, "One more thing, Naruto. Let's keep the details of your transformation limited to those who need to know. The last thing we need is panic about interdimensional invasions or celestial powers." "Understood," Naruto agreed. "But Kakashi-sensei, the Orochi already know about me. They'll be coming. Then we'll be ready," the Hokage replied simply. "Go see Tsunade. I'll arrange a security detail that won't draw attention." They left the Hokage Tower, stepping back into the bright midday sun. Naruto stretched, feeling both relieved to have reported their situation and burdened by the gravity of what they faced. "Your leader seems competent," Rangiku observed. "Kakashi-sensei, he's the best. Pretends to be lazy, but he's always 3 steps ahead of everyone else." Naruto grinned. "Come on, let's find Granny Tsunade." They found the former Hokage at the hospital, consulting on a complex case involving chakra pathways. When she saw Naruto enter her office with a stranger, her expression shifted from irritation at being interrupted to curiosity. "What trouble have you brought me this time?" she asked without preamble. Naruto laughed. What makes you think I'm bringing trouble? Because you're you, she replied dryly. Her amber eyes assessed Rangiku. And your companion isn't from any village I recognize. After ensuring the office was secure, they explained the situation again. Unlike Kakashi's measured response, Tsunade's reaction was more visceral. Her eyes widened at the mention of the celestial beasts, and she immediately moved to examine the markings on Naruto's skin. Idiotic boy, she muttered, medical chakra glowing at her fingertips as she traced the blue patterns. Always finding the most dangerous possible situation. It found me, Naruto protested weakly. The Azure Dragon chose him deliberately, Rangiku added. From what I understand of such beings, they don't make arbitrary selections. Tsunade's examination continued for several minutes, her frown deepening. Finally, she stepped back, arms crossed. The energy is integrated with your chakra network in a way I've never seen, she announced. It's not fighting your system like foreign chakra normally would. Instead, it's creating new pathways alongside existing ones, almost like a secondary circulatory system for this spiritual energy. Is that bad? Naruto asked. It's unprecedented, Tsunade corrected. But not necessarily harmful. Your Uzumaki vitality and Kurama's presence are likely helping your body adapt. She turned to Rangiku. In your experience, what are the CTS of this kind of spiritual transformation? Increased spiritual awareness, elemental affinity corresponding to the entity's nature, and potentially access to dimensions normally closed to humans, Rangiku listed. But this is beyond my expertise. In Soul Society, we have records of human spiritual hybridization, but nothing involving the celestial beasts directly. Tsunade sighed heavily. I'll need to consult some ancient medical texts. The Senju clan maintained records about mythological beings that most dismissed as legends. She fixed Naruto with a stern look. In the meantime, you show old practice controlling this power in a controlled environment. The last thing we need is you flooding the village because you sneezed wrong. I've got it under control, Naruto insisted, then faltered under her skeptical glare. Mostly. Use Training Ground 44, Tsunade instructed. The Forest of Death is isolated enough that any incidents won't affect civilians. As they prepared to leave, Tsunade added, and Naruto, be careful, power that comes too easily often extracts its price later. Outside the hospital, the afternoon sun had begun its descent toward the western horizon, casting long shadows across the village streets. Naruto led Rangiku toward the Ichiraku ramen stand, his stomach reminding him they hadn't eaten since early morning. Your former Hokage cares about you, Rangiku observed. She hides it behind gruffness, but it's obvious. Naruto smiled fondly. Granny Tsunade acts tough, but she's got a huge heart. Lost too many people she loved, so she pretends not to care anymore. Doesn't fool anyone, though. They reached Ichiraku, where Tsuki greeted Naruto with his usual enthusiasm before turning curious eyes toward his companion. Welcome, he called. Any friend of Naruto's eats at a discount. This is Rangiku, Naruto introduced her. She's from far away. Never had proper ramen before. Tsuki gasped in mock horror. Then you must try my special. Sit. They settled onto stools at the counter, the familiar environment bringing Naruto a sense of normalcy that had been lacking since he found the temple. For a brief moment, he could pretend were just two friends enjoying a meal, not vessels of ancient power dealing with interdimensional crises. So this is your favorite place? Rangiku asked, looking around the modest stand with interest. Best food in the world. Naruto confirmed. Tsuki and Ayame were the first people in the village to treat me like a normal kid, back when everyone else. He trailed off, realizing he was erring into personal history he rarely discussed. Rangiku seemed to sense his hesitation. You don't have to explain. I understand what it's like to be different. Tsuki arrived with steaming bowls of ramen, saving Naruto from having to respond. Rangiku's eyes widened at the first taste. This is amazing, she exclaimed with genuine appreciation. We have nothing like this in Soul Society. Told you, Naruto grinned, already halfway through his own bowl. They ate in companionable silence for a while, the simple pleasure of good food providing a welcome respite from cosmic concerns. As they finished, Naruto noticed the light fading from the sky, evening settling over the village. We should find you a place to stay, he said as they left Ichiraku. There's an inn near my apartment that's pretty nice. Actually, Rangiku replied, if we're going to train tomorrow, it might be best if I stay close by. In case your Azure Dragon power acts up overnight. Naruto considered this. My place isn't much, but I've got a spare futon. If you don't mind simple accommodations. I've slept on battlefields, she assured him. A futon sounds luxurious. They walked through the quieting streets toward Naruto's apartment building. The evening was pleasant, stars beginning to appear in the deepening blue above. For a moment, it was possible to forget the looming threats, to simply enjoy the peace of a village at rest. As they reached the building, however, Naruto tensed. His enhanced senses detected something, a presence on the rooftop opposite, watching them. We're being observed, he murmured to Rangiku, not breaking stride. She nodded almost imperceptibly. I feel it too, not a hollow, human, but with unusual spiritual presence. They entered the building casually, climbing to Naruto's apartment on the 3rd floor. Once inside with the door locked behind them, Naruto created a shadow clone. Check the rooftops, he instructed it. Quietly, the clone nodded and slipped out the window, transforming its appearance with a puff of smoke to avoid detection. Naruto's apartment was small but neat. A main room serving as both living area and kitchen, a bedroom visible through an open door, and a compact bathroom. It bore the signs of someone who spent more time outside than in. Minimal decoration, functional furniture, but touches of personality in the potted plants on the window. WSILL and framed photos of friends on the walls. Sorry for the mess, he said automatically, though there was little actual disarray. It's nice, Rangiku replied, examining the photos with interest. You have a lot of friends. Hard one, Naruto admitted, moving to prepare tea. Wasn't always that way. Rangiku paused before a particular photo. Naruto is a young teen with Sakura and Sasuke, Kakashi standing behind them. Your team, Team 7, he confirmed. Where it all started. The shadow clone returned, dispelling itself to transfer its memories directly to Naruto. His expression hardened. Orochi, he said quietly. At least 2 of them, watching the building. They're being careful, staying just at the edge of sensor range. Rangiku's hand moved to her Zanpakuto. Should we confront them? Naruto considered this. Not yet. Better to let them think we haven't noticed. Besides, Kakashi-sensei probably has Anbu watching us too. You're Black Ops, Rangiku nodded in understanding. Reasonable precaution. Naruto prepared the futon in the main room, insisting that Rangiku take the bedroom. She protested briefly before accepting with grace. As they settled in for the night, the presence of watchers outside added an edge of tension to their otherwise peaceful evening. They won't try anything in the village, Naruto said confidently. Too many high-level ninja around. Perhaps, Rangiku agreed. But tomorrow at this training ground. That might be exactly the opportunity they're waiting for. Naruto grinned, a flash of his old bravado breaking through. Let them try. I've been wanting a rematch anyway. Sleep came surprisingly easily despite the circumstances. And once again, Naruto dreamed of soaring above vast oceans, his body transformed into the serpentine form of the Azure Dragon. But this time, the dream shifted, showing him 3 other massive creatures, a white tiger prowling western mountains, a vermilion bird circling southern volcanoes, and a black turtle swimming through northern ice flows. The voice returned, ancient and powerful. 4 guardians, 4 directions, maintaining balance since the dawn of worlds. But one has fallen. The black turtle's power is taken, corrupted. Find the others before they too are claimed. The barriers weaken further with each passing day. The dream shifted again, showing a laboratory of some kind. A man stood before a swirling vortex of dark energy. His body partially transformed with black turtle shell patterns covering his skin. His face remained in shadow, but his voice carried clearly. 1 down, 3 to go. The Azure Dragon has chosen its vessel, but no matter. The boy can be broken, the power extracted. The white tiger and vermilion bird remain unclaimed. Find them. With all 4 celestial beasts under my control, the barriers between dimensions will shatter completely, and a new reality will emerge, one where I rule as god of all worlds. Naruto tried to move closer, to see the man's face, but the dream was already fading. Dissolving into morning light filtering through his window. He awoke with a gasp, blue markings glowing brightly across his skin. Outside, dawn was breaking over Konoha, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. But the peaceful scene couldn't dispel the urgency of his dream. The Black Turtle's power had already been claimed by their enemy. The race to find the remaining celestial beasts had begun. And the barriers between worlds grew weaker with each passing moment. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. Between Two Worlds. Naruto recounted his dream over breakfast, the morning sun casting long rays through his apartment windows. Rangiku listened intently, her gray eyes narrowing at the mention of the Black Turtle's power already being claimed. If your vision is accurate, she said, setting down her teacup, we're already behind in this conflict. The man in the lab, Naruto frowned, trying to recall details that had already begun to fade like morning mist. He seemed familiar somehow. Not someone I've met, but a feeling, like I should know him. Prophetic dreams often work that way, Rangiku replied. They show fragments of truth wrapped in symbolism. He Azure Dragon may be trying to communicate important information through your subconscious. Naruto absently traced one of the blue markings on his forearm. Though faded, they remained visible beneath his skin like pale rivers. We need to find the other two celestial beasts before this guy does. Any idea where to start? If they follow the cardinal directions literally, then the white tiger would be associated with the west and the vermilion bird with the south, Rangiku said. But that could mean anything from west of here to the westernmost point of your entire world. A knock at the door interrupted them. Naruto opened it to find Shikamaru Nara standing in the hallway, looking characteristically bored despite the early hour. Hokage wants to see you, he said without preamble. His sharp eyes flicked to Rangiku. Then back to Naruto. Both of you. Training Ground 44 has been secured for your use afterward. Thanks, Shikamaru, Naruto said. We'll head right over. As Shikamaru turned to leave, he added, and Naruto, whatever trouble you've found this time, try not to make it worse. Naruto grinned. When do I ever make things worse? Shikamaru's only response was a long-suffering sigh as he walked away. Friend of yours? Rangiku asked as they prepared to leave. One of my best, Naruto confirmed. Smartest person in the village, probably the whole shinobi world. If Young can help figure out this dimensional barrier problem, it's him. They made their way through the morning bustle of Konoha toward the Hokage Tower. Naruto noticed ambush shadows following discreetly. From rooftops, Kakashi's promised security detail. More concerning were the occasional flashes of unfamiliar chakra at the periphery of his senses. The Orochi were still watching. In the Hokage's office, they found not only Kakashi but also Tsunade, Shikamaru, and a bespectacled woman Naruto recognized as the head of Konoha's research division. We've been analyzing the information you provided, Kakashi began without preamble. Mitsuki-san has some preliminary findings. The researcher adjusted her glasses nervously. Based on the energy readings from Uzumaki-san and the historical records Tsunade-sama provided, we believe the Azure Dragon power corresponds to what we previously classified as nature energy anomalies occurring across the continent. She activated a wall-mounted display showing a map with glowing points scattered across it. We've detected similar energy signatures in 3 distinct locations, the temple you already visited in the Land of Water representing the east, and 2 others. One in the far western deserts beyond the Land of Wind, and another in a volcanic region south of the Land of Fire. The white tiger and vermilion bird, Naruto murmured. Most likely, Mitsuki agreed. However, we found no trace of the 4th energy signature that should correspond to the black turtle in the north. Because someone's already claimed it, Naruto said grimly, explaining his dream from the previous night. Shikamaru's expression grew more serious. If someone has already harnessed one of these powers and is actively seeking the others, we need to move quickly. What about these dimensional barriers? Rangiku asked. In my world, we have technology that monitors dimensional stability. Do you have anything similar? Mitsuki hesitated, looking to Kakashi, who nodded for her to continue. Since the 4th war, we've developed sensors to detect dimensional disturbances, initially to prevent another Kagaya-level threat. Recently, these sensors have been showing increasing anomalies. She manipulated the display to show a graph with a steadily rising line. Whatever is happening, it's accelerating. If the barriers between dimensions collapse completely, Rangiku said, her voice grave, it won't just be Soul Society and your world affected. There are countless realms existing in parallel. Hueco Mundo, the Dongai Precipice World, the Royal Realm. The resulting chaos would be apocalyptic. Then our course is clear, Kakashi stated. We must secure the remaining celestial beasts before our enemy does, and find a way to stabilize these dimensional barriers. I'm sending teams to investigate both locations, he continued. Naruto, you and Rangiku-san will remain in Konoha for now. You need to master that Azure Dragon power before engaging in further confrontations. But, Naruto began to protest. This isn't negotiable, Tsunade cut in. Your new power is leaking spiritual energy everywhere. Until you learn to control it properly, you're a.b. eaten for these hollow creatures and anyone else sensitive to such energy. Naruto wanted to argue but knew they were right. The markings on his skin had been pulsing more frequently since waking, and twice during breakfast. He'd accidentally caused water to levitate from his cup without even trying. Fine, he conceded. Training ground 44 it is. One more thing, Kakashi added. Our Intelligent E Division has found some information about the Orochi clan. They're an ancient group supposedly descended from the Great White Snake Sage's exiled disciples. They've remained hidden for generations, but have recently become active again. Primarily in the Land of Water and northern regions. That fits with my dream, Naruto noted. If they've already claimed the Black Turtle's power from the north. Precisely, Kakashi agreed. Be vigilant. We've detected multiple unknown chakra signatures in the village perimeter. They're watching you. Let them watch, Naruto said confidently. They'll learn I'm not an easy target. The Forest of Death lived up to its ominous name, massive trees blocking most sunlight, the undergrowth teeming with oversized insects and predatory beasts. Naruto had laired a training area near a small lake, providing open space amid the otherwise dense vegetation. This is charming, Rangiku commented, eyeing a centipede the size of her arm crawling up a nearby trunk. It grows on you, Naruto grinned. Plus, the dangerous reputation means we'll have privacy. They began with meditation, sitting cross-legged at the lake's edge. Rangiku guided Naruto through breathing exercises designed to harmonize spiritual energy, what Soul Reapers called Ryutsu. Your chakra system already blends physical and spiritual energy, she explained. But the Azure Dragon power is purely spiritual in nature. You need to distinguish between them to control it properly. Naruto closed his eyes, focusing inward. He could feel the familiar warm current of his chakra network, interwoven with Kurama's more potent energy. Alongside these familiar forces flowed something new, cooler, fluid like water, yet powerful as a storm surge. I can feel it, he said. It's like water flowing through me. But not just water, it's alive somehow. Good, Rangiku nodded. Now try to direct it. Imagine a small current flowing to your palm. Naruto extended his hand, concentrating on guiding the Azure energy. A soft blue glow emanated from his palm, coalescing into a sphere of swirling water suspended above his skin. Perfect, Rangiku encouraged. Now maintain it while standing. Naruto rose slowly, keeping his focus on the water sphere. For a moment, it remained stable, then suddenly expanded explosively, drenching them both. Sorry, he exclaimed, wiping water from his eyes. Rangiku laughed, wringing out her hair. Don't apologize. First attempts are always messy. She unsheathed her Zanpakuto. Let's try a different approach. I'll show you how Soul Reapers channel spiritual energy through our Zanpakuto. Maybe that will give you ideas for your own techniques. She demonstrated a series of forms, her sword leaving trails of spiritual energy visible to Naruto's enhanced perception. The movements were graceful yet decisive, each stance flowing naturally into the next. Roar, Hineka, she called. Her blade dissolved into ash that swirled around her in a controlled cyclone before slicing through several nearby branches with precision that belied its seemingly insubstantial nature. Your sword turns to ash? Naruto asked, impressed. Hineka is an ash-type Zanpakuto. Rangiku confirmed as the particles reformed into a blade. Each Soul Reaper's weapon reflects their spiritual nature. The ash can cut through nearly anything when properly focused. Naruto considered this. So maybe I need to find techniques that match the Azure Dragon's nature, water and wind control, right? Exactly, Rangiku smiled. Try creating something that reflects that dual nature. Naruto formed a familiar hand sign. Shadow Clone Jutsu. 5 perfect duplicates appeared around him. We'll try different approaches simultaneously, he explained. See what works best. The clones spread out, each attempting different manipulations of the Azure energy, one focusing on water, another on air currents, a third on combining both elements, while the last 2 experimented with integrating the power into familiar jutsu. Rangiku watched with fascination. Your clone technique, it actually splits your spiritual energy among multiple bodies. They're solid duplicates with their own chakra systems. Naruto confirmed as he observed his clone's efforts. Everything they learn transfers back to me when they dispel. Incredible, she murmured. In Soul Society, creating even a tempo. Rare duplicate requires captain-level skill. One clone suddenly shouted in triumph as it managed to form a miniature whirlpool above the lake's surface, drawing water upward in a spiral. Another had created visible air currents that carried fallen leaves in complex patterns. The third clone, attempting to combine both elements, lost control. A waterspout erupted from the lake, spinning wildly before crashing down, sending a wave across the training ground that knocked everyone off their feet. Naruto dispelled the clones, absorbing their experiences. Sorry about that, he said, helping Rangiku up from the muddy ground. Still working on the fine control. She squeezed water from her clothing, looking more amused than annoyed. At least you're making progress. The water and air manipulation separately looked promising. They continued training through the morning. By noon, Naruto could reliably manipulate small amounts of water and create gentle air currents, though combining the elements still resulted in unpredictable effects. Twice more, he accidentally created water explosions, once sending a geyser 30 feet into the air, and later causing all moisture in a 20-foot radius to momentarily levitate before crashing down. Let's take a break, Rangiku suggested after the second drenching. You're trying too hard. Spiritual energy responds to intention and emotion more than forced control. They settled beneath a massive tree whose branches provided some shelter. Naruto produced sealed containers of lunch from his pack, rice balls and pickled vegetables prepared before leaving his apartment. In Soul Society, Rangiku said between bites, new recruits often spend years learning to control their spiritual pressure before attempting complex techniques. Years, Naruto groaned. I don't think we have that long. You're already ahead of the curve, she assured him. Your experience with chakra control gives you a foundation most beginners lack. And your connection with Kurama has prepared your body for channeling immense power. Naruto absently touched the markings on his forearm. They had brightened during training, now glowing faintly beneath his skin. It's strange. Sometimes it feels completely natural, like I've always had this power. Other times it's like trying to hold back the ocean with my bare hands. The Azure Dragon is a sentient force, Rangiku reminded him. It may be adjusting to you just as you're adjusting to it. After lunch, they resumed training, focusing on practical applications. Naruto discovered he could enhance his existing jutsu. With the Azure energy, his shadow clones gained increased water affinity, and his Rasengan, when infused with the celestial power, created miniature storm systems within its spiraling form. By late afternoon, he'd made substantial progress, managing to create a water shield that could deflect Rangiku's weaker Kido attacks and generating wind currents strong enough to briefly levitate himself a few feet off the ground. Not bad for one day's work, Rangiku said approvingly as they prepared to end the session. Naruto formed one last hand sign. One more try. I want to see if I can. The words Ed in his throat as an overwhelming sensation crashed over him, a pressure so intense it momentarily stole his breath. Beside him, Rangiku stiffened, her hand moving automatically to her Zanpakuto. What is that? Naruto gasped, the markings on his skin flaring bright blue in response to the energy signature. A Senkaimon, Rangiku whispered. A gateway from Soul Society. The air before them shimmered, then split open like a paper door sliding aside. Bright light spilled through the opening, silhouetting several figures stepping through. As the gateway closed behind them, 3 Soul Reapers stood in the clearing, 2 men and a woman. all wearing the same black uniform as Rangiku, though with varying accessories. The foremost figure was a white-haired young man with striking turquoise eyes, a captain's haori draped over his shoulders. Though physically smaller than his companions, his spiritual presence dominated the clearing. "Captain!" Rangiku exclaimed, surprise evident in her voice. The white-haired Soul Reaper surveyed the scene with cool detachment. "Matsumoto, I see you've survived your unexpected departure." "Captain Hitsugaya," she bowed slightly. "I was trying to find a way to contact Soul Society." "Clearly," he interrupted, his gaze shifting to Naruto. "And this is the anomaly." Before Rangiku could respond, Naruto stepped forward. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki, shinobi of Konohagakure." He met the captain's gaze directly. "And you are?" The temperature in the clearing seemed to drop several degrees. "Captain Toshiro Hitsugaya of the 10th Division." His eyes narrowed. "Your spiritual pressure is unusual. The Research and Development Institute detected it even through the dimensional barriers." The taller male Soul Reaper stepped forward, a bald man with red markings at the corners of his eyes. A zanpakuto resting on his shoulder. "So this is what caused all the fuss. Doesn't look like much to me." The female Soul Reaper, petite with short dark hair and a Seryu's expression, placed a restraining hand on her companion's arm. "Akaku, remember our orders. Observation only." "Observation," Naruto repeated, looking between the newcomers. "What exactly is going on here?" Hitsugaya's expression remained impassive. "Soul Society has detected multiple breaches in the dimensional barriers. Lieutenant Matsumoto's disappearance coincided with a particularly severe fluctuation. We've been dispatched to investigate the cause and assess potential threats." "Threats?" Naruto bristled. "We're the ones trying to prevent interdimensional collapse here." "Captain," Rangiku interjected smoothly, "I can explain everything. Naruto has awakened the power of Seryu, the Azure Dragon. It appears to be responding to the weakening barriers between dimensions." Hitsugaya's EY's widened fractionally, the first crack in his composed demeanor. "The Azure Dragon, one of the 4 celestial beasts." He studied Naruto more intently. "That would explain the unusual spiritual signature. But how did a human come to possess such power?" Rangiku quickly summarized their discoveries: the temple, the Orochi clan's attack, Naruto's absorption of the Azure Dragon power, and their subsequent investigations in Konoha. As she spoke, the other Soul Reapers' expressions ranged from skepticism to growing concern. "If what you're saying is true," Hitsugaya said when she finished, "this situation is more serious than we anticipated. Head Captain Kiraku needs to be informed immediately." "Then you believe me?" Rangiku asked, relief evident in her voice. "The evidence is standing right in front of us," Hitsugaya replied, gesturing to the blue markings still visible on Naruto's skin. "Though I admit, I've never seen anything quite like it." The bald Soul Reaper, Akaku, stepped closer, examining Naruto with undisguised curiosity. "So, you got some kind of dragon power now? Can you breathe fire or something?" "Water and wind manipulation, mostly," Naruto replied, still wary but relaxing slightly at the shift in tone. Akaku looked disappointed. Fire would be cooler." "Matter aim," Hitsugaya said sharply. "This isn't a social call." He turned back to Rangiku. "We need to establish communication protocols between our worlds. If the dimensional barriers are indeed failing, coordination will be essential." "Our Hokage would agree," Naruto said. "He's already authorized full cooperation with Soul Society." The female Soul Reaper spoke up. "Captain, we should report this development immediately. If the celestial beasts are awakening, the other divisions need to be alerted." "Agreed, Hinamori," Hitsugaya nodded. "We'll return to Soul Society and brief the captains." He fixed Rangiku with a stern look. "Matsumoto, you'll remain here as liaison. Continue gathering information and monitoring." He glanced at Naruto. "The situation?" "Yes, Captain," she acknowledged. Hitsugaya turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing. The Department of Research and Development detected another unusual spiritual signature in this world, similar to a hollow, but different. Be on your guard." With that ominous warning, Hitsugaya raised his hand, causing the air to split open once more. The 3 Soul Reapers stepped through the shimmering portal, which closed behind them, leaving Naruto and Rangiku alone in the clearing once more. "Well, Naruto said after a moment. That was intense. Your captain seems cheerful. Rangiku laughed, tension leaving her shoulders. Captain Hitsugaya takes his responsibilities very seriously. He's actually one of the more reasonable Aptanes. You should meet Kenpachi sometime. I'm not sure if that's a recommendation or a warning, Naruto smiled. Then, more seriously, what did he mean by another unusual spiritual signature? Something like a hollow but different. Rangiku's expression darkened. I don't know, but combined with what we learned about the Black Turtle's power being claimed, it can't be coincidence. They gathered their equipment. The training session effectively concluded by the Soul Reaper's interruption. As they prepared to leave the Forest of Death, Naruto paused, his enhanced senses detecting something amiss. We're being watched again, he murmured, scanning the dense foliage surrounding the clearing. Rangiku nodded almost imperceptibly. Since the Senkaimon opened, multiple presences. Orochi. Most likely. Their spiritual signature has a distinctive, serpentine quality. Naruto considered their options. Think they heard everything? Probably. Rangiku replied quietly. The question is what they'll do with the information. Let's find out, Naruto suggested with a grin that promised trouble. Before Rangiku could stop him, he called out loudly, you might as well show yourselves. Ing isn't very dignified for the mighty Orochi clan, is it? Silence greeted his challenge. Then, a soft, mocking laugh echoed through the trees. 5 figures melted from the shadows, surrounding them in a loose circle. Unlike the Orochi members they'd encountered at the temple, these wore lighter armor in varying shades of green and black, their faces uncovered except for scale-like tattoos around their eyes and along their jawlines. The apparent leader, a lean man with long black hair tied in a high ponytail, stepped forward. Uzumaki Naruto, bearer of the 9 tails, thief of Seryu's power. His voice was smooth as silk, but with an underlying hiss that raised the hairs on Naruto's neck. And now, apparently, ally of the death gods. I wouldn't say I stole anything, Naruto replied, casually shifting into a defensive stance. The Azure Dragon chose me. The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. A temporary arrangement, I assure you. I am Orochi Takeshi, second fang of the Serpent's Maw. I've come to reclaim what belongs to our clan. Funny, your friend Keita said something similar right before getting her ass handed to her, Naruto shot back. Anger flashed across Takeshi's face before his composed mask slipped back into place. First Fang Keita underestimated you. I won't make the same mistake. He glanced at Rangiku. The Soul Reaper is an unexpected complication, but ultimately irrelevant. I wouldn't be so sure, Rangiku replied coolly, her hand resting on her Zanpakuto's hilt. Soul Society takes dimensional threats very seriously. Takeshi's smile widened, revealing unnaturally pointed canines. Oh, we're counting on that. In fact, your superior's arrival was most informative. He made a fluid gesture, and his companions spread out further, each drawing weapons. Curved blades similar to the one Keita had wielded. Naruto summoned 3 shadow clones without hand signs, a testament to his growing mastery. If you're looking for a fight, you've found one. Not at all, Takeshi demurred. This is merely reconnaissance. Though I admit, I'm curious to see how well you've integrated Seryu's power. His eyes gleamed with predatory interest. Perhaps a small demonstration. The air thickened with tension as neither side moved. Naruto felt the Azure Dragon power responding to his rising adrenaline, the markings on his skin brightening perceptibly. Naruto, Rangiku murmured, remember your training. Don't let them provoke you into losing control. Wise counsel, Takeshi commented. But ultimately futile. The power of a celestial beast cannot be truly controlled by a human, even one with your unique constitution. He made another gesture, and his companions readied their weapons. Show us what Seryu can do through its human vessel, or we'll provide the necessary motivation. One of the Orochi, a muscular woman with a scar bisecting her left eyebrow, suddenly flung her hand forward. Earth style. Stone serpent jutsu. The ground erupted as stone snakes shot toward Naruto and Rangiku. Naruto leapt aside while Rangiku flash stepped away, the attack cratering the earth where they'd stood. Water style. Azure current. Naruto called, channeling the celestial power through a familiar hand sign. Water from the nearby lake surged upward, forming a spiraling dragon that crashed into two of the Orochi members, sending them tumbling backward. "There it is," Takeshi said with satisfaction, making no move to join the battle himself. The Azure Dragon's power, filtered through human technique. Fascinating, but ultimately diluted. The remaining Orochi attacked simultaneously, one launching poison Senbon, another creating a wind technique that accelerated the projectiles to blinding speed. Naruto's shadow clones intercepted most of the attack, but several needles struck his thigh. Pain bloomed immediately, followed by alarming numbness. "Poison," he gritted out, channeling healing chakra to neutralize it. "I'm on it," Kurama's voice resonated in his mind. "But be careful, this isn't ordinary toxin. It's specifically designed to disrupt chakra flow." Rangiku had engaged the muscular woman, her Zanpakuto still sealed but wielded with deadly precision. The Orochi member matched her strike for strike, her curved blade leaving trails of venomous chakra with each swing. "Roar, Hineka," Rangiku commanded, her blade dissolving into ash tea. Hat surrounded her opponent in a gray cyclone. The Orochi woman countered with an earth technique, creating a dome of stone around herself that the ash struggled to penetrate. Naruto formed his signature technique, Azure energy swirling alongside wind chakra. Rasengan. He charged the nearest opponent, a tall man wielding twin daggers. The Orochi attempted to dodge, but one of Naruto's clones appeared behind him, forcing him back into the path of the spiraling sphere. The impact sent him crashing through several trees before he crumpled, unconscious. "Impressive adaptation," Takeshi commented, still observing from a safe distance. "But how will you fare against this?" He bit his thumb, drawing blood, then slammed his palm to the ground. Summoning Jutsu. Venomous Hydra. A massive explosion of smoke filled the clearing. When it cleared, a monstrous creature loomed over the battlefield, a serpent with 5 heads, each larger than a man, scales gleaming iridescent green in the dappled sunlight. All 5 heads hissed in unison, venom dripping from foot-long fangs. "This is getting interesting," Rangiku commented, rejoining Naruto as they faced the new threat. She'd dispatched her opponent, the unconscious Orochi woman lying amid shattered stone fragments. "Any experience with multi-headed snake monsters?" Naruto asked, eyeing the Hydra warily. "Not specifically, no," she replied. "But I've found decapitation works for most things." "Worth a try," Naruto agreed. "I'll distract it, you go for the kill." They moved in perfect synchronization, as if they'd fought together for years rather than days. Naruto created a dozen shadow clones that charged the Hydra from multiple angles, while he himself leapt high into the air, drawing all 5 heads' attention upward. Rangiku flash-stepped behind the creature. Her Zanpakuto transformed into a cloud of ash that sliced through one of the necks with surgical precision. The head fell, dissolving into smoke before it hit the ground. Their moment of triumph was short-lived. Where the severed neck had been, 2 new heads grew with astonishing speed, smaller than the originals but rapidly expanding. "Okay, bad plan," Naruto called. "New idea. Fire usually works for regenerating creatures," Rangiku suggested, retreating as all 6 heads now turned in her direction. "Not exactly my specialty," Naruto replied, dodging a strike from one of the heads. "But I might have an alternative." He landed atop one of the massive tree branches, hands forming a complex sequence of signs. The azure markings on his skin brightened dramatically, spreading across his chest and up his neck. "Water style. Azure Dragon's domain." The air around them grew heavy with moisture, condensing from nothing as if the humidity of the entire forest were being drawn to a single point. The Hydra paused its attack, all heads turning toward this new phenomenon with predatory interest. Water coalesced around Naruto, forming a translucent dragon shape that mirrored his movements. As he extended his arms, the watery construct grew larger, soon matching the Hydra in size. "Now that's more like it," Rangiku grinned, retreating to a safer vantage point. The Hydra attacked first, all 6 heads striking simultaneously. Naruto's water dragon met them head-on, its fluid form absorbing and redirecting their momentum. Where the venomous fangs made contact, the water froze instantly, immobilizing the heads one by one. From his perch on a distant tree branch, Takeshi watched with growing fascination. Remarkable control for a novice. Perhaps Seryu chose more wisely than we anticipated. With 5 of the Hydra's heads frozen in place, the last lunged desperately at Naruto himself. He met it with a water-enhanced Rasengan that shattered its frozen siblings on impact. The entire construct collapsed, reverting to normal water that soaked the already damp clearing. Takeshi slowly applauded. A most educational demonstration. My master will be pleased. He made a signal, and the remaining conscious Orochi members retreated to his side. We'll meet again soon, Uzumaki Naruto. Your mastery grows quickly, but time is not on your side. What's that supposed to mean? Naruto demanded, the water dragon construct dissipating as his concentration shifted. Takeshi's smile turned predatory. The black turtle's power has already been claimed. The white tiger and vermilion bird soon will be. And then, his eyes gleamed with zealous light. Then the world as you know it will cease to exist, replaced by something far more magnificent. He formed a hand sign, and the Orochi members disappeared in swirls of mist, taking their unconscious comrades with them. Naruto jumped down from the branch, landing beside Rangiku. The exertion of maintaining a complex water construct had left him breathing heavily, the blue markings on his skin pulsing with each heartbeat. That was reckless, Rangiku said, though her tone carried more admiration than censure. But effective. Thanks. Naruto grinned, then winced as the poison in his system flared again. Though I think I might need a trip to the hospital. Whatever was on those Senbon fighting Kurama's healing. Rangiku slipped an arm around his waist to support him. Then let's go. And on the way, you can explain how you managed to create a water dragon construct on your first day of training. Would you believe natural talent? Naruto suggested weakly. Her skeptical expression made him laugh despite the pain. Worth a try. The hospital room was quiet save for the soft beeping of monitoring equipment. Naruto sat upright in bed, his arm connected to an IV delivering a specialized antidote Sakura had personally prepared after analyzing the poison. You're lucky, she had told him sternly. This toxin specifically targets chakra pathways. If you weren't an Uzumaki with the 9 tails healing factor, you'd be in serious trouble. Now, as evening settled over Konoha, Naruto ND himself with an unexpected gathering of visitors. Rangiku had remained by his side throughout the treatment, while Shikamaru and Sakura had arrived shortly after to debrief him on the Orochi encounter. Kakashi had sent word that he was calling an emergency council meeting based on the intelligence gathered. So the Soul Society sent reinforcements, and the Orochi were watching the whole time, Shikamaru summarized. His expression troubled. Troublesome doesn't begin to cover it. At least we know more about their abilities now, Naruto pointed out. And I got some good practice with the Azure Dragon power. Practice that nearly drained your chakra completely, Sakura reminded him, checking his vital signs. Tsunade-sama was right. You need more control before using such large-scale techniques. Rangiku, who had been unusually quiet, spoke up. The water dragon construct wasn't just impressive, it was theoretically impossible for someone with his level of training. In Soul Society, manifesting a physical representation of spiritual power takes decades to master. Naruto has always been a fast learner when it comes to jutsu, Sakura said with a fond smile. Especially the destructive ones. It wasn't entirely my doing, Naruto admitted. When I channeled the Azure Dragon power, it felt like I was remembering how to do it, not learning. Like the knowledge was already there, just waiting to be accessed. Shikamaru's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. The celestial beast may be providing more than just power. It could be sharing its knowledge and experience as well. Which could be dangerous, Rangiku cautioned, if it's influencing your actions or thoughts. It's not like that, Naruto insisted. More like having access to a library of techniques specifically designed for this power. I still choose which to use and how. A knock at the door interrupted their discussion. A young nurse entered, looking somewhat flustered. Uzumaki-san, the Hokage requests your presence at the council meeting. If you're able, both you and Matsumoto-san. Naruto was already swinging his legs over the side of the bed. I'm fine. The poison's neutralized, right Sakura? She sighed in resignation. Technically yes, but you should still rest. She stopped, recognizing the determined look in his eyes. Fine, but I'm coming too. The council chamber was located in a secure wing of the Hokage Tower. Rarely used except for matters of village security. When they arrived, Naruto was surprised to find not only Kakashi and the elders but also representatives from each of Konoha's major clans. Tsunade sat at Kakashi's right, her expression grave. "Sorry to summon you from the hospital," Kakashi said as they entered. "But developments require immediate attention." Naruto and Rangiku took seats at the long table, with Sakura and Shikamaru joining them. The atmosphere in the room was tense, faces serious in the warm glow of hanging lanterns. "I've briefed the council on recent events," Kakashi continued. "Both the Soul Society envoys and the Orochi attack. However, we've received troubling news from our teams investigating the western and southern celestial sites." He nodded to an Anbu member standing in the shadows, who stepped forward to deliver their report. The team dispatched to the western desert region encountered heavy resistance from Orochi forces. They were unable to reach the temple itself but confirmed that the White Tiger power appears to remain dormant. The southern team, the Anbu hesitated. "We lost contact with them 12 hours ago, after EY reported engaging a transformed enemy near the volcanic site." Murmurs of concern rippled through the assembled council members. Naruto felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "You think they've already claimed the Vermilion Bird power?" he asked. "It's a possibility we must consider," Kakashi replied. "Which makes securing the White Tiger's power all the more urgent." Homura Mitokado, one of the village elders, cleared his throat. "With respect, Hokage-sama, are we certain involving ourselves in this conflict is wise? These celestial beasts and dimensional barriers seem beyond the scope of shinobi affairs." "With all due respect, Elder," Rangiku interjected, "this threatens all worlds, not just Soul Society or the shinobi nations. If the dimensional barriers collapse completely, our reality as you know it will cease to exist. And we're supposed to take the word of an outsider on this?" Kaharu Udatane, the other elder, questioned sharply. Tsunade slammed her palm on the table, silencing further debate. "We've confirmed her account with our own sensors. The dimensional disturbances are accelerating. This isn't a matter of opinion, it's measurable fact." Kakashi raised a hand for quiet. "We have two immediate priorities. First, securing the White Tiger power before the Orochi can claim it. Second, learning more about who leads them and what they intend to do with the celestial beasts they acquire." "The man from my dream," Naruto said. "He already has the Black Turtle's power. If he gets the Vermilion Bird too, 3 of 4 would give him tremendous advantage," Rangiku finished. "In ancient texts, each celestial beast governs different aspects of reality. The Black Turtle represents winter, darkness, and wisdom. The Vermilion Bird embodies summer, fire, and transformation. And together, Shikaku Nara, Shikamaru's father, asked. Together with the White Tiger, they could theoretically manipulate the fundamental forces that separate dimensions," Rangiku replied. "Only the Azure Dragon's power would stand in opposition, and alone, it might not be enough." Silence fell as the council absorbed this grim assessment. Finally, Kakashi spoke again. "We'll dispatch an elite team to the western site immediately. Naruto, given your connection to the Azure Dragon, you'll lead the mission." Naruto nodded, determination washing away any lingering effects of the poison. "When do we leave?" "Dawn tomorrow," Kakashi replied. "Shikamaru will coordinate the tactical aspects. Sakura, you'll provide medical support. And me?" Rangiku asked. "You'll accompany them as Soul Society liaison." Kakashi confirmed. "Your expertise regarding the celestial beasts will be invaluable." The meeting continued with discussion of logistics and contingency plans, but Naruto found his attention drifting to the blue markings visible beneath his skin. They seemed to pulse with urgency, as if the Azure Dragon itself understood the stakes. As the council adjourned, Rangiku touched his arm gently. "You should rest before tomorrow. That poison took more out of you than you're admitting." Naruto started to protest but found he couldn't argue. Fatigue was settling into his bones. The day's exertions catching up to him. "Maybe you're right. But first, let's get some food. I'm starving." They found a small, quiet restaurant near the hospital, less boisterous than Ichiraku but serving excellent grilled fish and vegetables. As they ate, Naruto noticed Rangiku seemed preoccupied, her usual vibrant presence subdued. "Something on your mind?" he asked. She hesitated, setting down her chopsticks. "I'm concerned about how quickly events are moving. In Soul Society, we'd spend weeks analyzing a threat like this before acting. Luxury we don't have, Naruto pointed out. If Takeshi was telling the truth about the vermilion bird. I know, she sighed. It's just, I've seen what happens when powerful forces are rushed into conflict without proper preparation. Her eyes grew distant. People I cared about paid the price. Naruto sensed deeper currents beneath her words. You lost someone. In a previous battle, Rangiku's hand drifted unconsciously to the pink scarf around her neck. His name was Jin Ichimaru. We grew up together in Rukongai, the poorest districts of Seoul society. A sad smile touched her lips. He was complicated, did terrible things, but, for reasons I didn't understand until it was too late, he betrayed Seoul society. He pretended to, she corrected. He joined Aizen's rebellion as a double agent, planning to kill Aizen when the moment was right. But I didn't know that. For years, I believed he had truly betrayed everything we stood for. Naruto listened quietly, understanding the pain of feeling abandoned by someone important. In the end, he died trying to kill Aizen, Rangiku continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Died thinking I still believed him a traitor. And I never got to tell him. She trailed off, fingers tightening around her cup. That you understood, that you forgave him, Naruto suggested gently. She nodded, gray eyes meeting his. Ever since, I've had trouble trusting completely. Always looking for hidden motives. Waiting for the other betrayal. I get it, Naruto said. Trust doesn't come easy after something like that. No, she agreed. But sometimes, she studied him with surprising intensity. Sometimes you meet someone who makes you want to try again. The air between them seemed to grow warmer, charged with something neither was quite ready to name. Naruto found himself nodding details he'd been too busy to properly appreciate before. The way her hair caught the lantern light, the subtle strength in her hands, the depth behind her playful facade. For what it's worth, he said finally, I trust you. Completely. Quote, even though we only met a few days ago? She asked, a hint of her usual teasing smile returning. Time doesn't always matter, he replied. Some people, you just know. Their meal concluded in comfortable silence, both processing the unexpected intimacy of the moment. As they walked back toward Naruto's apartment, the streets of Konoha were quiet, most villagers already retired for the night. We should get some rest, Rangiku said as they reached his building. Tomorrow will be challenging. Yeah, Naruto agreed. Then, making a sudden decision, but first, there's something I want to show you. He led her past his apartment, continuing up the stairs to the rooftop. The night was clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. The village spread below them. Lights twinkling in windows, the stone faces of the Hokage monument illuminated by moonlight. Best view in Konoha, Naruto said, sitting on the edge of the roof. I used to come up here when I was a kid, imagining what it would be like to have my face up there with the other Hokage. Rangiku settled beside him, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. It's beautiful, she said softly. When I was younger, I wanted to be Hokage so people would acknowledge me, Naruto continued. Now I want it so I can protect them. Moments like this, peaceful nights, people safe in their homes, that's worth fighting for. In Seoul society, we call it the balance, Rangiku replied. The proper order of things. Life, death, rebirth, all flowing as they should. She gazed up at the stars. Whatever this enemy is planning by collecting the celestial beasts, it threatens that balance. We'll stop them, Naruto said with quiet confidence. Together, as if responding to his determination. The azure markings on his skin brightened momentarily, casting a soft blue glow between them. Rangiku reached out, her fingertips gently tracing one of the lines along his forearm. The simple contact sent a current through him unlike anything he'd experienced before, not quite physical, not quite spiritual, but something in between. The Azure Dragon chose well, she murmured. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the universe seemed to contract to just the two of them on that rooftop. Naruto found himself leaning forward slightly, drawn by an impulse he couldn't quite name. Rangiku's gaze dropped briefly to his lips, then back to his eyes. The moment was shattered by a violent tremor that shook the entire building. They broke apart, instantly alert as a second, strong. Gearquake rattled roof tiles loose around them. Earthquake. Naruto wondered, jumping to his feet. Rangiku's expression was grim as she unsheathed her Zanpakuto. No, something worse. The air 100 yards from their position distorted, stretching and tearing like fabric under too much tension. Through the widening gap, Naruto glimpsed another reality, a barren landscape of endless white sand under a black sky. Hawako Mundo, Rangiku breathed. The hollow world is bleeding into yours. From the dimensional tear, a massive creature emerged, vaguely humanoid but with 6 arms, each ending in razor claws. Its bone-white mask featured multiple eye holes arranged in a circle, all glowing with sickly yellow light. A hole the size of a dinner plate punctured its chest where a heart should be. "That's a hollow?" Naruto asked, already forming shadow clones. "An Ijuka's," Rangiku corrected grimly. "Much stronger than the one we encountered at sea. This shouldn't be possible. They can't normally create Garganta without assistance." The hollow roared, the sound echoing across Konoha. Lights flickered on throughout the village as civilians were awakened by the disturbance. In the distance, alarm bells began to ring. "We need to contain this quickly," Naruto said, "before it reaches populated areas." They leapt from the rooftop, intercepting the hollow before it could advance further into the village. Rangiku moved with blinding speed, her Zanpakuto slicing through one of the creature's arms. Black ichor sprayed from the wound, but the hollow seemed more enraged than injured. "Roar, Hineka," Rangiku commanded, her blade dissolving into the familiar cloud of ash that swirled around the hollow, creating dozens of small cuts across its white hide. Naruto channeled the Azure dragon power, water materializing from the air around him to form serpentine tendrils that lashed at the hollow's legs, binding it in place. With its movement restricted, he launched himself forward, Rasengan forming in his palm, the Azure version. Spiraling with both chakra and celestial energy, the impact drove the hollow backward, but it remained standing, its mask cracked but intact. It let out another roar, this one different, almost like a summons. The dimensional tear widened further, and 3 smaller hollows crawled through, insect-like creatures with pincer appendages and multiple eyes. "This is wrong," Rangiku called as she engaged the new threats. "Hollows don't coordinate like this naturally. Something, or someone, is directing them." Naruto created more shadow clones to deal with the small lure hollows while he focused on the Ijukas. The massive hollow had broken free of his water bindings and was advancing again, all 5 remaining arms swinging in deadly arcs. "Water style. Azure Dragon's Fang," Naruto called, forming new hand signs. Water condensed from the air, sharpening into javelin-like projectiles that pierced the hollow's tough hide. It staggered but continued forward with terrifying determination. Throughout the village, shinobi were responding to the threat. Naruto glimpsed Anbu squads taking positions on nearby rooftops, while civilians were being evacuated from the area. The Ijukas suddenly paused, its circular arrangement of eyes all turning in the same direction, toward the Hokage Tower. It let out a sound almost like laughter, then changed course, heading directly for the village's administrative center. "It has a target," Naruto realized with alarm. "The dimensional sensors," Rangiku said, dispatching the last of the smaller hollows with a precise ash strike. "They must be housed there." They pursued the hollow, but it moved with surprising speed for its size, leaping across rooftops with single-minded purpose. By the time they caught up, it had already reached the Hokage Tower Plaza, where it was met by a defensive line of Jonin and Anbu. Fire and lightning techniques struck the creature from multiple directions, but it shrugged them off, focused entirely on its objective. With a massive swipe of its claws, it scattered the defenders, creating a path toward the tower entrance. Kakashi appeared in a swirl of leaves, his hand already crackling with lightning chakra. "Reikiri," he called, driving the concentrated blade of electricity into the hollow's side. The creature howled in pain but didn't fall. Instead, it caught Kakashi with a back-handed blow that sent him crashing into a nearby wall. "Kakashi-sensei," Naruto shouted, redoubling his speed. He reached the plaza just as the hollow smashed through the tower's main doors. Rangiku Flash stepped ahead of him, intercepting the creature in the central hallway. "Bakudo number 61, Raikujokuro," she called, extending her hand. 6 beams of light slammed into the hollow's midsection, temporarily immobilizing it. Naruto didn't waste the opportunity. Multi-shadow clone technique. 20 copies of Naruto appeared, surrounding the paralyzed hollow. Each formed a Rasengan, but unlike his usual technique. These glowed with Azure energy, miniature whirlpools spinning within the chakra spheres. Azure Rasengan Barrage. The clones attacked simultaneously, driving their techniques into different points on the hollow's body. The combined impact created a devastating explosion of spiritual and chakra energy that shook the entire tower. When the dust cleared, the hollow lay motionless, its mask shattered into fragments that were already beginning to dissolve. Is it dead? Naruto asked, breathing heavily from the exertion. Purified, Rangiku confirmed. Its soul can now pass on properly. But their victory was short-lived. From the hollow's dissolving corpse, a small object clattered to the floor. A black stone sphere the size of a marble, inscribed with arcane symbols. Before either could react, it pulsed once. Then exploded in a flash of dark energy. The wave of power knocked them both backward, but more disturbingly, it seemed to pass through the building's walls, expanding outward across the village. Where it touched, reality itself seemed to waver, like heat shimmer on a summer day. What was that? Naruto demanded, helping Rangiku to her feet. She looked deeply troubled. Some kind of spiritual device. But not from Soul Society. Kakashi appeared in the doorway, supporting himself against the frame. The research division's sensors just went off the scale. Whatever that pulse was, it's accelerated the dimensional deterioration exponentially. It was a catalyst, Rangiku realized. The hollow was just a delivery system. Someone sent it here specifically to trigger that device. But who? Naruto asked. The Orochi. Their answer came in the form of a chilling laugh that seemed to emanate from the air itself. A swirling vortex of darkness appeared in the center of the hallway, coalescing into the projected image of a man. Though transparent like a hologram, the detail was sufficient to make out his features, middle-aged with sharp, aristocratic features. Wearing what appeared to be a modified Soul Reaper uniform with scientific instruments attached to various points. Most disturbing were the black turtle shell patterns visible on the exposed portions of his skin, pulsating with dark energy. Fascinating, the projection said, studying the devastation around him. The catalyst performed even better than anticipated. The dimensional barriers in his region have thinned by approximately 60% already. Who are you? Rangiku demanded, her Zanpakuto raised defensively though it would pass through the immaterial projection. The man turned, noticing them for the first time. Ah, Lieutenant Matsumoto. How unexpected to find you here of all places. His gaze shifted to Naruto, eyes widening with interest. And this must be the Azure Dragon's chosen vessel. Remarkable. The celestial energy has integrated quite smoothly with your chakra network. You're the one from my dream, Naruto realized. The one who took the black turtle's power. The man smiled, bowing slightly as if flattered. Kuretsuchi Seigen, formerly of the 12th Division Research and Development Institute. And yes, Genbu and I have become quite well acquainted. He gestured to the patterns on his skin. Though, took, is such a crude term. I prefer, liberated. Seigen, Rangiku whispered, recognition dawning. You were exiled over a century ago for forbidden research into soul manipulation. Exiled, yes, stopped, hardly. His smile turned cold. Soul Society's short-sightedness has always been its greatest weakness. They call it maintaining balance, but what they fear is true evolution. What do you want? Naruto demanded. Why are you destroying the dimensional barriers? Seigen regarded him with something like pity. Destroying? No, young Jinchuriki. I'm not destroying, I'm unifying. Imagine all realms merged into one perfect whole, where death is merely a transition of state, not location. Where souls need never be separated by artificial boundaries. That's insane, Rangiku said. The barriers exist for a reason. Merging the realms would cause catastrophic spiritual imbalance. Initial chaos, certainly, Seigen conceded. But from chaos comes new order. I've spent centuries preparing for the transition. His expression hardened. The celestial beasts are the key, the original guardians of these barriers. With their power, I can reshape reality itself. Naruto stepped forward, azure markings brightening with his anger. We'll stop you. Seigen laughed again. You're welcome to try. In fact, I'm counting on it. The Azure Dragon's power is the final piece I require. And you'll bring it right to me. He glanced at something beyond the projection's view. I believe my associates have already secured the vermilion bird's essence. Only the white tiger remains unclaimed. The projection began to fade. A word of advice, Azure Dragon. When you visit the Western Shrine, be prepared for disappointment. My Orochi servants are already there in force. With those ominous words, Sagan's image dissolved completely, leaving them in the damaged hallway with the implications of his threat hanging in the air. Kakashi straightened, his expression grave despite his masked face. It seems our mission has gained even greater urgency. We need to leave immediately, Naruto insisted. Not wait for dawn. Agreed, Kakashi nodded. I'll summon Shikamaru and Sakura. Be ready to depart within the hour. As Kakashi left to make preparations, Rangiku turned to Naruto, her expression troubled. Sagan is more dangerous than I imagined. In Soul Society, his research was considered so forbidden that all records were sealed away. If he's had a century to continue that work, combined with the Black Turtle's power, then we'd better make sure he doesn't get the White Tiger too. Naruto said firmly, one advantage at a time. They exited the damaged tower into the plaza, where emergency teams were already at work addressing structural damage and treating the injured. The village had responded with impressive efficiency to the unexpected attack, a testament to lessons learned from previous crises. Naruto, a familiar voice called. Sakura hurried toward them, medical pack already slung across her shoulders. Kakashi-sensei told me what happened. Is it true? We're leaving now. As soon as the team assembles, Naruto confirmed. The situation's worse than we thought. Shikamaru arrived moments later, looking unusually alert despite the late hour. Troublesome doesn't begin to cover this, he muttered, then immediately shifted to tactical planning. I've studied the maps of the western desert region. The temple is located in a canyon system that provides multiple approach vectors but limited extraction routes. The Orochi will have the area heavily guarded, Naruto said, and according to Sagan, they're already there in force. Then we'll need to be smarter, not just stronger, Shikamaru replied. I've requested Sai join us for aerial reconnaissance. Within the promised hour, their 5-person team had gathered at Konoha's western gate, Naruto, Rangiku, Shikamaru, Sakura, and Sai. Each carried minimal equipment for maximum speed, prepared for what would likely be a 3-day sprint across the land of fire and into the desert regions beyond. The dimensional instabilities are spreading, Kakashi informed them as they prepared to depart. Our sensors detect similar anomalies forming around the western temple site. Whatever Sagan did here with that catalyst device, the effect is propagating along ley lines connecting the celestial shrines. All the more reason to hurry, Naruto said. Kakashi nodded. Be careful. We'll continue working on countermeasures here and attempt to contact Soul Society directly using the data Rangiku-san provided. As they set out, moving at the rapid pace only trained shinobi could maintain, Naruto felt the Azure Dragon power stirring within him, more settled now, more integrated with his chakra. The markings on his skin pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, as if the celestial entity shared his determination. Beside him, Rangiku matched his pace effortlessly, her expression focused and resolute. Their earlier moment on the rooftop lingered between them, unspoken but not forgotten. They traveled through the night, the stars wheeling overhead as they pushed westward. The 4sts of the land of fire gradually thinned, giving way to rolling grasslands and eventually the scrubby vegetation that marked the transition to desert terrain. By dawn, they had covered nearly half the distance to their destination, a testament to their enhanced speed and determination. They paused briefly for rest and sustenance, taking shelter in the shade of a rocky outcropping. The air feels different here, Sakura observed, scanning their surroundings. Heavier somehow. Rangiku nodded. Spiritual pressure is increasing as we get closer to the western shrine. The white tiger's dormant power affects the environment around it. Even sealed. Sai, who had been scouting ahead using his ink birds, landed nearby. There's a strange distortion approximately 10 miles ahead. The air appears to ripple. Like heat shimmer but more pronounced. Another dimensional weak point, Rangiku confirmed grimly. Sagan's catalyst is working as he intended. They resumed their journey with renewed urgency, pushing through exhaustion. By midday, they entered true desert, endless dunes of sand broken occasionally by rocky formations. The heat was intense, the sun a merciless presence overhead. We're getting close, Naruto said. The Azure dragon power within him responding to something ahead. I can feel it. The distortion Sai had reported soon became visible to all of them, a shimmering in the air that twisted light around it, creating the impression of looking through warped glass. Beyond it, the landscape seemed subtly different, as if two slightly different realities were overlapping. It's a partial merger with Hueco Mundo, Rangiku explained. The desert regions of both worlds have similar spiritual resonance, making the barriers especially thin here. They approached cautiously, skirting the edge of the distortion. As they crested a large dune, the canyon system came into view in the distance, a massive wound in the earth, red rock walls rising hundreds of feet above the desert floor. There, Shikamaru pointed. The entrance to the canyon is heavily guarded. I count at least 20 Orochi sentries. Through the heat haze, they could make out figures in the familiar green and black armor positioned strategically around the canyon mouth. Further evidence of occupation came in the form of temporary structures erected near the entrance, command tents and supply caches. Frontal assault would be suicide, Sai observed. We don't need one, Naruto replied, forming a hand sign. Shadow clone reconnaissance. A single clone appeared, immediately transforming its appearance to match the desert surroundings, tan clothing and wrapped face that could pass for a local traveler. The clone set off down the back side of the dune, circling wide to approach the canyon from an angle that wouldn't immediately connect it to their position. Smart, Shikamaru approved. While we wait, we should consider our approach options. They retreated to a more sheltered position among a cluster of weathered rock formations, where Shikamaru spread out a rough map he'd drawn based on available intelligence. The temple itself should be approximately 2 miles into the canyon system, in what appears to be a central chamber. He explained. Multiple branching paths provide both opportunity and risk. We could be easily cornered if we choose wrong. Can you sense the White Tiger's power? Sakura asked Naruto. He closed his eyes, reaching out with his enhanced perception. There's definitely something there, similar to the Azure Dragon's energy but different. More fierce, less fluid. The White Tiger represents autumn, metal, and righteous judgment, Rangiku added. Its energy would feel more solid, more defined than the Azure Dragon's flowing nature. Their planning continued until Naruto suddenly stiffened, receiving memories from his dispelled clone. The clone got close enough to overhear the guards, he reported. They're expecting someone important. A third Fang, who's arriving tonight to oversee the final preparations. Final preparations for what? Sakura asked. Some kind of ritual to extract and contain the White Tiger's essence, Naruto replied, sorting through the clone's fragmented memories. They mentioned special equipment being brought from their main base. Shikamaru's expression turned calculating. This could work to our advantage. If they're not expecting to perform the ritual until after this third Fang arrives, we can move tonight, before the reinforcements arrive, Naruto finished. Exactly, Shikamaru nodded. The clone get any other useful information? The temple has 3 levels, Naruto said. The White Tiger's shrine is at the lowest level, but they've been unable to breach the final chamber. Apparently, there's some kind of seal that's resisting their efforts. The celestial beasts have their own protections, Rangiku explained. If the shrine remains sealed, it means the White Tiger hasn't chosen a vessel yet. They spent the remainder of the day preparing, conserving energy and finalizing their strategy. As the sun began to set, painting the desert in gold and crimson, they moved into position on the ridge overlooking the canyon entrance. Remember the plan, Shikamaru said quietly. Sai creates a diversion at the northern end of the canyon. Sakura and I infiltrate through the eastern passage. Naruto and Rangiku take the more direct route to the temple, since they're most attuned to celestial energies. And if we encounter this third Fang? Sakura asked. Avoid if possible, Shikamaru advised. Our priority is securing the White Tiger essence before they can extract it. As darkness fell across the desert, temperatures plummeting with typical desert extremes, they moved into action. Sai unleashed several of his largest ink beasts, massive tigers and snakes that charged the northern perimeter with convincing ferocity. The diversion worked perfectly. Most of the Orochi guards rushed to confront the apparent attack, leaving the eastern and central passages less heavily defended. Naruto and Rangiku slipped past the remaining sentries, using the shadows and her flash step technique to remain undetected. The canyon interior was eerily beautiful, towering walls of stratified red rock, sculpted by wind and time into fantastic shapes. Moonlight cast deep shadows, creating a maze of darkness and silver illumination. They moved quietly, following the central passage deeper into the earth. The spiritual pressure is intensifying, Rangiku whispered as they descended a natural stone stairway. We're getting close. Naruto nodded, feeling the Azure Dragon power responding to whatever lay ahead. The markings on his skin had brightened again, providing a faint blue glow that he had to concentrate to suppress. They encountered the first real resistance at what appeared to be a recently excavated tunnel. Two Orochi guards stood at attention before an ornate stone doorway carved with tiger motifs. Naruto and Rangiku exchanged a glance, silently agreeing on their approach. Rangiku flash-stepped behind one guard while Naruto's shadow clone appeared behind the other. They struck simultaneously, rendering both unconscious without raising an alarm. Beyond the doorway lay a vast chamber, clearly artificial, with precisely cut stone walls rising to a dome ceiling at least 50 feet overhead. The architecture was ancient but impeccably preserved, columns carved to resemble stylized tigers supporting the massive roof. At the chamber's center stood a raised platform accessed by 7 steps. Up it sat an altar similar to the one Naruto had seen in the Azure Dragon Temple, but crafted from white marble veined with gold. And on that altar rested a crystal orb identical to the Seryu orb, but glowing with soft golden light. The white tiger essence, Rangiku breathed. It hasn't been claimed yet. They approached cautiously, alert for traps or additional guards. The chamber appeared deserted, but Naruto's enhanced senses detected recent activity, scuff marks on the dusty floor, discarded tools near the walls where the Orochi had apparently been attempting to bypass the altar's protections. Look. He pointed to a complex array of equipment surrounding the altar, metal devices connected by cables to what appeared to be containment vessels. They were planning to mechanically extract the power without a human vessel. Rangiku examined the equipment with a frown. This technology, it's similar to devices used in Soul Society for spiritual extraction. Sagan must have adapted it for his purposes. They reached the base of the platform, looking up at the glowing orb. Unlike the Azure Dragon Temple, there appeared to be no obvious protective measures, no barrier, no seal visible to the naked eye. It feels almost too easy, Naruto said suspiciously. The white tiger chooses its vessel, Rangiku reminded him. Perhaps the greatest protection is simply that it won't respond to those it deems unworthy. As they climbed the steps to the altar, the orb's glow intensified, pulsing in counterpoint to the azure markings on Naruto's skin. The two energies seemed to recognize each other, complementary forces acknowledging their celestial connection. What now? Naruto asked, standing before the altar. I'm already connected to the Azure Dragon. I can't exactly host two celestial beasts. Before Rangiku could respond, slow applause echoed through the chamber. They spun to find a figure standing in the doorway, a woman dressed in elaborate Orochi ceremonial armor, her long silver hair bound in a high ponytail. Face marked with more extensive scale patterns than any Orochi they'd encountered previously. Well done, she called, her voice carrying easily in the chamber's perfect acoustics. You've saved us considerable effort by bypassing the outer defenses. Third Fang, I presume? Naruto asked, positioning himself protectively before the altar. The woman inclined her head in acknowledgement. Orochi Kimiko, Third Fang of the Serpent's Maw. And you've arrived precisely on schedule. Schedule? Rangiku questioned, hand moving to her Zanpakuto. Kimiko smiled, the expression never reaching her cold eyes. Did you really believe our security was so easily penetrated? Or that Sagan-sama would leave such a valuable prize so lightly guarded? She made a sweeping gesture. Your diversion was anticipated. Your companions have already been detained. Naruto's stomach dropped. You're lying. Am I? Kimiko withdrew a communicator from her belt, activating it with a casual flick. Bring them. The door behind her opened wider, admitting 4 Orochi guards dragging Shikamaru, Sakura, and Sai, all conscious but clearly battered from a fight, their hands bound behind them with specialized restraints. Sorry, Shikamaru said grimly. They were waiting for us. Had some kind of shadow binding technique that countered my jutsu. Kimiko approached leisurely, confidence evident in every step. Sagan-sama predicted your movements with remarkable accuracy. The Azure Dragon's vessel would naturally be drawn to secure the White Tiger. And in doing so, she gestured to the altar. You've activated its responsive state, making extraction much simpler than our previous attempts. Naruto's hands formed shadow clone seals, but Kimiko clicked her tongue in warning. I wouldn't. My subordinates have orders to kill your friends at the first sign of resistance. The standoff stretched painfully, neither side willing to make the first move. The orb continued pulsing on the altar, its golden light steadily intensifying. What does Sagan want? Rangiku demanded. Why collect the celestial beasts? To remake reality, Kimiko replied, as if the answer were obvious. The artificial boundaries between worlds are an abomination, a cosmic error that has persisted far too long. Souls should flow freely between states of existence, not be confined to separate realms. That's insane, Naruto said. The barriers exist for a reason. Merging the worlds would cause chaos, countless deaths. Kimiko's expression hardened. Change requires sacrifice. Those who survive will inhabit a perfected reality, one where death is merely a transition, not a separation. She turned her attention to the orb. Now, step aside. My technicians will handle the extraction process. And if we refuse, Rangiku challenged, then your friends die first, Kimiko said simply. Followed by a much more painful extraction of the Azure Dragon's power directly from your corpse, Uzumaki Naruto. The situation seemed impossible. Abandon the White Tiger essence or sacrifice their companions. But as Naruto's mind raced for solutions, he felt something unexpected. The Azure Dragon power within him was resonating with the orb, communicating in some primal language beyond words. An idea formed. Desperate, potentially catastrophic, but perhaps their only option. Rangiku, he said quietly, do you trust me? She met his eyes, understanding immediately that he had a plan. Completely. Then be ready to move, he whispered. Louder. To Kimiko, he called. Fine. You win. We'll step aside. Kimiko's smile widened. Wise decision. As the Orochi leader approached the platform, Naruto moved aside as promised, but instead of retreating completely, he positioned himself at the edge of the altar, directly opposite Kimiko. The orb pulsed between them, its golden light creating stark shadows across their faces. Just so you know, Naruto said conversationally, celestial beasts can be really particular about who touches their power. Before Kimiko could respond, he placed his hand directly on the White Tiger orb. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Golden light erupted from the orb, merging with the azure energy that simultaneously flared from Naruto's markings. The competing energies created a maelstrom of power that engulfed the entire platform. What are you doing? Kimiko shrieked, trying to retreat but finding herself caught in the energy storm. Naruto gritted his teeth against the competing forces tearing through him. The Azure Dragon and White Tiger energies were N.O.T. designed to coexist in a single vessel. They repelled each other violently, using his body as their battleground. Rangiku, he managed to call through the pain. Now, she understood instantly. Florida, Shish stepping to the altar and placing her own hand on the orb alongside his. The effect was immediate. The golden energy redirected, flowing from the orb into Rangiku instead of fighting for dominance in Naruto's body. Her eyes widened in shock as the White Tiger's power surged through her, white gold markings appearing on her skin in patterns reminiscent of tiger stripes. She gasped, the sensation, evidently as overwhelming as Naruto had experienced with the Azure Dragon. The chaotic energy storm subsided as quickly as it had formed, leaving Naruto and Rangiku standing on either side of a now empty crystal orb. Between them, Kimiko stared in horror at what had transpired. Impossible, she whispered. 2 vessels, 2 celestial beasts. Naruto, despite the drain from the energy conflict, managed a defiant grin. Told you they're particular about who they choose. Rangiku straightened, the white gold markings on her skin settling into more defined patterns along her arms and collarbone. Her spiritual pressure had transformed, becoming sharper, more focused, the flowing grace of a soul reaper now combined with the predatory precision of the White Tiger. Kimiko's shock gave way to fury. Kill the prisoners, she shouted to her guards. But the momentary chaos had given Sakura the opening she needed. With a surge of chakra-enhanced strength, she snapped her restraints and drove her fist into the floor. creating a shockwave that knocked the guards off balance. Shikamaru and Sai seized the opportunity, freeing themselves in the confusion. The chamber erupted into battle. Orochi. Reinforcements poured through the doorway, while Kimiko herself launched a direct attack at Rangiku, drawing a curved blade that hummed with venomous energy. "You dare steal what belongs to Seigen-sama," she snarled, her strikes blindingly fast. Rangiku parried with her Zanpakuto, the white tiger's power visibly enhancing her movements. "It was never yours to take," she countered, her blade leaven. Trails of golden light with each swing. Naruto created a dozen shadow clones to engage the Orochi forces, buying time for Shikamaru to position himself for his shadow binding technique. Sakura and Sai fought back to back, her monstrous strength complementing his ink creatures in devastating combination. As the battle raged, Naruto felt the Azure Dragon power responding differently, more coordinated, more purposeful. As if it were communicating with the white tiger energy now flowing through Rangiku. When they fought near each other, the blue and gold energies seemed to harmonize rather than conflict, creating unexpected synergies. Kimiko, recognizing the battle was turning against her, suddenly disengaged from Rangiku and slammed her palm against the chamber floor. Earth-style. Grand collapse. The entire chamber shuddered violently, cracks spreading across the ancient stonework. Dust and debris began raining from the ceiling as the temple's structural integrity failed. "She's bringing down the whole temple," Shikamaru shouted. "We need to get out now." Kimiko used the distraction to retreat toward a side passage, shouting orders to her remaining forces. "Fall back. Initiate contingency protocol. Don't let her escape," Naruto called, pursuing through the collapsing chamber. Rangiku followed close behind, her flash step enhanced by the white tiger's power. They chased Kimiko through winding passages, dodging falling stonework as the temple continued to collapse around them. The Orochi leader was fast, clearly familiar with the temple's layout as she navigated the labyrinthine structure with unerring precision. They emerged into a different chamber, smaller than the main shrine but dominated by a stone platform where complex equipment hummed with ominous energy. At its center pulsed a dark sphere similar to the one from the hollow attack in Konoha. Another catalyst device, Rangiku recognized with alarm. Kimiko stood beside it, hand poised over a control mechanism. "Too late, vessels. Whether we claim the white tiger's power or not, the dimensional barriers will still fall." "Don't," Naruto warned, Azure energy gathering around his hands. Kimiko's smile was all malice. Seigen-sama foresaw every possibility. "Your interference was accounted for." She pressed her palm against the device. "The cascade has already begun." The dark sphere pulsed once, then erupted with the same reality-warping energy they had witnessed in Konoha. The wave expanded outward, passing through walls as if they were insubstantial. Simultaneously, the temple's collapse accelerated dramatically. Massive stones broke free from the ceiling, smashing into the equipment platform. Kimiko leapt clear, making a series of hand signs that opened a swirling vortex of mist, some form of transportation technique. "Tell Seigen his plan will fail," Naruto called as she prepared to escape. "We'll find him, wherever he's hiding." Kimiko paused at the vortex's edge, her expression suddenly pitying. "Hide? Why would he hide when victory approaches?" She gestured to the expanding wave of dark energy. "This catalyst doesn't just weaken the barriers between your world and Hueco Mundo. It creates a direct pathway to our main base." Quote, "Where?" Rangiku demanded. "Soul Society itself," Kimiko replied with evident satisfaction. "While you've been chasing shadows in the living world, Seigen-sama has established his true stronghold in the heart of the Seraite." The final catalyst.